Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Call That Changed Everything. Roman Reynolds had always been a light sleeper. 20 years in military intelligence had trained him to wake at the slightest disturbance, a habit that had served him well in the corporate world and now, at 45, in his seemingly peaceful suburban life. But the shrill ring of Thelma's phone at 3 a.m. wasn't just any disturbance. It was the sound that would unravel everything he thought he knew about his marriage. Roman lay motionless in their king-sized bed, watching through half-closed eyes as his wife of 18 years fumbled for her phone in the darkness. Her hands trembled as she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought we agreed you'd never call here," she said, her tone carrying a mixture of fear and anger that Roman had never heard before. He controlled his breathing, maintaining the steady rhythm of sleep while every muscle in his body tensed. In the darkness, he could see Thelma's silhouette rigid against the faint light filtering through their bedroom window. Whoever was on the other end was speaking in urgent, hushed tones that Roman couldn't quite make out, but he caught fragments, something about the plan and tonight. Then Thelma gasped, a sharp intake of breath that cut through the silence like a blade. "He won't be a problem. I'll make sure," she whispered into the phone, her voice now cold and determined in a way that made Roman's blood run cold. She turned slightly, and Roman felt her gaze on him. He maintained his facade of sleep, years of training keeping his breathing steady even as his mind raced. After what felt like an eternity, Thelma slipped out of bed and padded silently toward the bathroom, still clutching her phone. Roman's mind immediately shifted into tactical mode. 18 years of marriage, and he'd never seen this side of his wife. Thelma, the woman who organized charity galas and baked cookies for their daughter's school events, had just spoken with the cold efficiency of someone planning something sinister. The phrase, "he won't be a problem," echoed in his mind, and Roman was certain the he in question was him. Before he could process this revelation further, the soft patter of bare feet on hardwood announced another presence. Their 16-year-old daughter, Lindsay, appeared in the doorway, her face pale and eyes wide with terror. "Dad," she whispered urgently, glancing toward the bathroom where they could hear Thelma's muffled voice continuing the conversation. "You need to hide now." The words hit Roman like a physical blow. His own daughter was warning him of danger from her mother. This wasn't just about an affair. This was something far more serious. "Lindsay, what's—" he began to whisper, but she shook her head frantically. "There's no time. They're coming. Mom, she's not who you think she is. She's been planning this for months." Tears streamed down Lindsay's face as she spoke. "I overheard her talking to Uncle Jerome last week. They're going to—" The bathroom door opened, cutting her off. Lindsay quickly melted back into the shadows of the hallway as Thelma emerged, now fully dressed in dark clothing. In her hand was something that made Roman's blood freeze. His service pistol from the safe, he thought only he knew the combination to. Thelma moved with practiced silence toward the bed, and Roman realized with crystal clarity that his wife of 18 years was planning to kill him in his sleep. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to fight, to survive, but Roman forced himself to remain still. He needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. As Thelma approached the bed, Roman caught sight of her face in the dim light. Gone was any trace of the woman he'd married, replaced by someone cold and calculating. She raised the pistol with steady hands, and Roman knew that whatever came next, his old life was over. The Roman Reynolds who had trusted, who had loved without question, who had believed in the sanctity of his family, that man died in that moment. What remained was the predator he'd once been, the man who had earned his reputation in the darkest corners of military intelligence as someone you never crossed twice. Because Roman Reynolds never forgave, and he never forgot. Chapter 2. The Hunter Awakens. Roman's survival instincts kicked in with lethal precision. As Thelma raised the pistol, he rolled hard to the left, off the bed and onto the floor just as the muzzle flash lit up the room. The shot was silenced. She'd even thought to modify his own weapon. The bullet punched into a mattress where his head had been moments before. In one fluid motion, Roman swept Thelma's legs, sending her crashing to the floor. The pistol skittered across the hardwood as he pinned her down with minimal effort, his hand across her throat. "Who the hell are you?" he growled, his voice carrying the edge of a man who had interrogated enemies in places that didn't officially exist. Thelma's mask finally slipped completely, her face twisting into something ugly and unfamiliar. "You always were too smart for your own good, Roman. Jerome said you'd figure out eventually." "Jerome Massey," Roman said, the pieces clicking into place. Thelma's brother, the one who'd been so helpful when Roman left military service, who'd helped them relocate to this quiet suburb, who'd been a constant presence in their lives. "How long?" 3 years, she spat. 3 years of playing the loving wife to a man who never even suspected that his perfect little family was nothing but an operation. Roman's mind raced back through the timeline. 3 years ago, he'd been recruited by Meridian Securities, a private defense contractor, after his military discharge. The recruitment had come through Jerome's recommendation. Jerome, who'd claimed to have connections in the private sector. Jerome, who'd been Thelma's brother since birth, but whom Roman had never bothered to thoroughly investigate. "What's the endgame?" Roman asked, increasing pressure on her throat. Thelma smiled, even as she gasped for air. "Your security clearance, your access codes, your biometric data. You're worth $50 million to the right people, Roman. Dead, you're worth nothing but a life insurance payout." Roman heard movement downstairs, multiple sets of footsteps trying to be quiet, but failing against someone with his training. They'd planned this as a home invasion gone wrong, probably with Roman as the heroic father who died defending his family. He released Thelma and moved to the window, peering through the blinds. 3 vehicles parked strategically around the house, engines running, occupants moving into position. Professional, but not military professional. Private contractors, probably ex-military themselves, but lacking the discipline that came with elite training. "Dad!" Lindsay's voice came from the hallway, tight with fear. "Stay where you are, sweetheart," Roman called back, his voice calm despite the situation. To Thelma, who was trying to crawl toward the pistol, he said, "How much of it was real?" "Any of it. Does it matter?" she wheezed. Roman retrieved his pistol and checked the magazine. 3 rounds missing. She'd been practicing. "Lindsay is real," he said, more to himself than to her. "She warned me." "Lindsay doesn't know what's good for her," Thelma snarled. "She was supposed to stay out of this." That was when Roman understood the full scope of the betrayal. Not only had his wife been living a lie for 3 years, but she'd been willing to sacrifice their daughter's well-being, possibly her life, for whatever this operation was designed to accomplish. Roman had killed men for less. He zip-tied Thelma's hands behind her back with restraints he kept in his nightstand, old habits from his intelligence days, and secured her to the radiator. "You're going to tell me everything. Names, timelines, objectives, extraction plans. Everything. Go to hell," she spat. Roman smiled, and it was the smile that had made enemy combatants talk when traditional interrogation methods had failed. "Thelma, you've forgotten something important about my former profession. I didn't just gather intelligence, I extracted it. And I was very, very good at my job." He heard the soft sound of the front door being breached downstairs, followed by the careful footsteps of men trying to move silently through his house. Roman counted at least 4, possibly 6 intruders. Moving to his closet, Roman opened a hidden panel that revealed his war chest, weapons, ammunition, tactical gear, and communication equipment that Thelma had never known existed. As he strapped on body armor and loaded his preferred rifle, he felt the familiar cold calm that had made him one of the military's most effective operators. "This is what you never understood about me," he said to Thelma as he prepared for battle. "I wasn't just a soldier or an intelligence officer. I was the man they sent when everyone else had failed. I was the final solution." Roman checked his weapons one more time and moved toward the bedroom door. The men downstairs thought they were hunting a soft suburban husband. They were about to discover they'd walked into the den of an apex predator. "Lindsay," he called softly into the hallway. "Go to the panic room. Now." As his daughter's footsteps faded toward the hidden safe room he'd installed when they'd moved to the house, Roman allowed himself one last look at the woman he'd thought was his wife. "When this is over," he told her, "you're going to wish you'd aimed better." Chapter 3. First Blood. Roman moved through his own house like a ghost, every creaking floorboard and shadow mapped in his memory. The intruders were good, but they were operating in his territory now, and Roman had spent years learning to hunt humans in urban environments. He could hear them moving through the first floor, 2 in the kitchen, 1 near the front door, and at least 2 more in the living room. They were spreading out, probably planning to sweep upstairs in a coordinated assault. It was a sound tactical approach against a normal target. Roman wasn't normal. He slipped into Lindsay's room and opened her window, which led to the roof of the garage. From there, he could access the maple tree that he'd climbed dozens of times during weekend maintenance. Within minutes, he was on the ground outside, moving in a wide circle to approach the house from an unexpected angle. The surveillance team and the vehicles hadn't expected him to leave the house. Roman took out the driver of the first SUV with a sleeper hold, appropriated his radio, and listened to the tactical chatter. "Alpha Team, status report." The voice was professional, military. "Kitchen clear, moving to stairs." "Copy that." "Bravo Team, maintain perimeter." "Negative contact on target." "Wife confirmed secure upstairs." Roman smiled grimly. They still thought they were hunting an unsuspecting civilian. Time to change the dynamic. He slipped through the back door using a key hidden in a fake sprinkler head, another security measure Thelma had never known about. The first intruder in the kitchen never saw him coming. Roman's knife found the spot between the 3rd and 4th ribs, angled upward to the heart. The man dropped silently. The second kitchen operative turned at the soft sound of his partner's fall and found Roman's pistol pressed against his forehead. "How many?" Roman whispered. "6 total, plus support," the man gasped, recognizing death in Roman's eyes. "Extraction plan?" "Helicopter pickup at the elementary school." 10 minutes. Roman zip-tied him and moved toward the living room. Through the doorway, he could see 2 men positioned near the stairs, assault rifles ready. Professional positioning, good sight lines, disciplined trigger control. Ex-military, definitely, but not elite tier. Roman triggered the house's security system from his phone, plunging the first floor into darkness and activating the infrared strobes that would disorient anyone wearing night vision. In the chaos that followed, he moved like a predator among prey. The first man went down with a broken neck before he could call out. The second managed to get off a shot that went wide before Roman's blade found his throat. The man by the front door tried to radio for backup, but found Roman behind him. The radio crushed and its owner unconscious. "Alpha Team, respond." The voice on the radio was getting urgent. Roman keyed the mic and spoke in the accent he'd perfected during operations in Eastern Europe. "Alpha Team is compromised. Target is not in the house." "Repeat, target is not in the house." "Say again, Alpha." "Target has fled. We need immediate extraction." "Abort mission." There was a pause, then, "Negative. Mission continues. Find a target." Roman smiled. Jerome wasn't going to let his people retreat, which meant Roman could pick them off one by one without worrying about reinforcements. The remaining 2 operators upstairs were now isolated and facing an enemy they'd underestimated. He climbed the back stairs, the ones Thelma didn't know about that led to the hidden passage between the walls, a Cold War-era addition by the home's original owner that Roman had discovered and enhanced. From inside the walls, he could hear the 2 remaining intruders searching the bedrooms. "Where the hell is he?" one of them muttered. "Check the daughter's room again. Maybe he's hiding with her." That decided their fate. Roman had been willing to let them live if they surrendered, but threatening Lindsay crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He emerged from the wall panel behind the first operator and killed him quickly and quietly. The second one turned at the sound and found himself facing Roman across the upstairs hallway. "You're Roman Reynolds?" the man said, lowering his weapon slightly. "We heard stories about you in Afghanistan. The ghost of Kandahar." "You heard correctly," Roman replied. "Which means you know what happens next." The man nodded slowly and placed his weapon on the floor. "I have a family." "So did I," Roman said and pulled the trigger. As the gunshot echoed through the house, Roman felt the familiar cold satisfaction that came with eliminating threats. But this was just the beginning. Jerome Massey had sent these men, which meant Jerome knew where Roman lived, knew his routines, knew his family. That was unacceptable. Roman returned to his bedroom, where Thelma was exactly where he'd left her, though her eyes were wide with shock at the sounds of combat from downstairs. 6 men, Roman said conversationally as he began cleaning his weapons. All dead. Your brother's going to be disappointed. You're insane, she whispered. No, Roman replied. I'm thorough. Now, you're going to tell me everything about Jerome's operation. Who he's working for, what they want with my clearance codes, where they're based, and how many more people are involved. I won't tell you anything. Roman finished cleaning his pistol and looked at her with the same expression he'd worn when interrogating Taliban commanders. Thelma, you've made 2 critical errors tonight. First, you underestimated who I am. Second, you threatened my daughter. He moved closer, and she could see something in his eyes that made her press back against the radiator. I've spent 20 years perfecting the art of extracting information from people who didn't want to give it. Some of them were trained to resist torture. Some of them were fanatics who welcomed death over betrayal. None of them held out forever. Roman knelt down, so they were eye level. You're not a fanatic, Thelma. You're just a woman who got in over her head and chose the wrong side. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything I want to know, and in exchange, I might let you live long enough to spend the rest of your life in federal prison instead of dying very slowly in this bedroom. And if I don't, Roman's smile was cold as winter. Then I'll start with your fingers and work my way up. I have all night, and Jerome doesn't expect his team to check in until dawn. Thelma stared at him for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time the man she tried to manipulate and betray. The suburban husband was gone, replaced by something that belonged in the shadows of foreign wars. She began to talk. Chapter 4. The Web Unravels. As dawn broke over the suburban neighborhood, Roman sat in his home office reviewing the intelligence Thelma had provided. The scope of the operation was larger than he'd initially suspected, and far more personal. Jerome Massey wasn't just Thelma's brother. He was a high-level operative for a consortium of foreign intelligence services and criminal organizations that specialized in recruiting long-term assets within the American defense establishment. The operation against Roman had been 3 years in the planning, beginning with Jerome's insertion into their lives after Roman's discharge from military service. But the most shocking revelation was about Lindsay. According to Thelma, their daughter wasn't his biological child. She was Jerome's daughter, placed with Thelma when Roman and Thelma were dating as part of a long-term infiltration plan. Lindsay had been raised to eventually become an asset herself. Roman's hands tightened on the intelligence report as he processed this information. For 16 years, he'd loved and protected a child who was genetically programmed to betray him. Yet Lindsay had warned him, had risked her own safety to save his life. A soft knock on the office door interrupted his thoughts. Dad. Lindsay's voice was tentative, uncertain. Come in, sweetheart. Lindsay entered the office, her eyes red from crying and her face pale with exhaustion. She'd spent the night in the panic room while Roman dealt with the cleanup. 6 bodies removed, blood cleaned, evidence sanitized. The efficiency of it spoke to years of experience in making problems disappear. Is she? Lindsay couldn't finish the question. Your mother is alive, Roman said carefully. She's in federal custody now. She's not my mother, Lindsay said quietly. I heard what she told you about my real father. About Jerome. Roman studied his daughter, the child he'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, protected from nightmares. Genetically, she might be Jerome Massey's offspring, but she was his daughter in every way that mattered. DNA doesn't make a family, Lindsay. Love does. Loyalty does. Choice does. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You chose to warn me last night. You chose to save my life. That makes you my daughter, regardless of what any test might say. Tears streamed down Lindsay's face. I've known for 2 years. I overheard Mom and Uncle Jerome talking about the asset and realized they meant me. They wanted me to seduce information out of you, to become your confidant, so I could access your security protocols. But you didn't. How could I? You're my dad. You taught me right from wrong. You show me what real love looks like. She wiped her eyes. When I realized what they were planning, I started documenting everything. I have recordings, photographs, evidence of their meetings. Roman felt a surge of pride, mixed with concern. His 16-year-old daughter had been conducting a counterintelligence operation against her own mother and biological father. The training he'd given her, self-defense, situational awareness, critical thinking, had turned her into exactly the kind of person who could recognize and resist manipulation. "Show me," he said. For the next hour, Lindsay presented a comprehensive dossier that would have impressed professional intelligence analysts. She documented Jerome's visits, recorded conversations when possible, and even managed to photograph documents left carelessly around the house. The picture that emerged was of a sophisticated network that had been using their family as a base of operations for years. "There's something else," Lindsay said hesitantly. "Jerome has other families, other operations like this one. He showed me photographs once, said they were success stories of assets who'd chosen the right side." Roman's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about him. It was about a systematic program of infiltration and recruitment targeting American intelligence personnel. How many other families were living lies? How many other children were being groomed as future assets? Did you recognize any of the families in the photographs? Some of them. Remember the Dawsons from my old school? And the Warners from the country club? Lindsay pulled out her phone and showed Roman screenshots she'd taken. These are all families of people with security clearances. Jerome has been building a network for years. Roman studied the images, his military mind automatically cataloging targets and threats. Richard Dawson worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Christopher Warner was a contractor with Lockheed Martin. There were at least a dozen families in the photographs, all with children Lindsay's age or younger. "We need to expose this," Lindsay said. "We need to save those families." Roman was quiet for a long moment, considering options. The traditional approach would be to contact the FBI, turn over the evidence, and let the justice system handle it. But Roman had learned long ago that the justice system had limitations, especially when dealing with foreign intelligence operations. Courts required proof beyond reasonable doubt. International law enforcement was slow and bureaucratic. Diplomatic considerations often took precedence over justice. And most importantly, traditional justice wouldn't account for the personal betrayal he'd suffered or the danger his daughter had been placed in. "There's another way," Roman said finally. "We can end this operation permanently and send a message that will prevent anyone from trying something similar." "What kind of message?" Roman looked at his daughter, the girl who'd risked everything to save him, who'd conducted her own investigation to protect the country she loved, who'd chosen loyalty over blood. She deserved to know what kind of man her father really was. The kind that requires eliminating Jerome Massey and everyone associated with his network, Roman said simply. The kind that makes it clear that certain lines should never be crossed. Lindsay was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she asked, "What do you need me to do?" Roman smiled, recognizing himself in her unflinching acceptance of what needed to be done. "First, we're going to make Jerome think his operation succeeded. Then we're going to use his own network against him." He pulled up a map on his computer, marking locations from Lindsay's evidence. "Jerome thinks I'm dead and that Thelma completed her mission. He'll want to debrief her and collect the intelligence she was supposed to gather. That gives us a narrow window to get close to him." "It's a trap," Lindsay said, understanding immediately. "The best kind," Roman agreed. "The kind where the prey thinks it's the predator." As they began planning, Roman felt the familiar cold focus that had made him so effective in military operations. But this time, it wasn't about national security or military objectives. This was personal. This was about family, the real kind, built on love and choice rather than genetics and manipulation. Jerome Massey had made the mistake of threatening the people Roman loved most. Now he was going to learn why Roman Reynolds never forgave and never forgot. Chapter 5, The Bait. Roman's plan required precision timing and a convincing performance from someone Jerome would never suspect, Lindsay herself. 3 days after the failed assassination attempt, Roman put the plan into motion. Lindsay sat in a coffee shop near Georgetown University, the same one where she'd met Jerome for uncle-niece bonding sessions over the past 2 years. To any observer, she looked like a traumatized teenager seeking comfort from a family member after her father's sudden death. Jerome Massey arrived exactly on time, his face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s with prematurely gray hair and the kind of bearing that suggested military service. To the casual observer, he looked like exactly what he claimed to be, a successful businessman who doted on his sister's family. "Lindsay," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I came as soon as I heard. I'm so sorry about your father." Lindsay allowed tears to well up in her eyes. Not difficult, given the circumstances. "It happened so fast, Uncle Jerome. The police said it was a home invasion, but—" She let her voice trail off. The picture of a confused and frightened girl. "But what, sweetheart? Mom's been acting strange since it happened. She keeps talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere new. She's been making phone calls at all hours, speaking in languages I don't recognize." Lindsay leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I found Dad's gun in her purse yesterday." "Why would she have his gun?" Jerome's expression didn't change, but Roman, watching from a table across the cafe through a directional microphone and camera hidden in Lindsay's backpack, caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Jerome was processing this information, trying to determine if Thelma had broken protocol or if this was genuine confusion from a grieving daughter. "Your mother is probably just scared," Jerome said carefully. "Sometimes people do strange things when they're processing grief." "Uncle Jerome," Lindsay said, her voice taking on the tone of desperate trust that teenagers used when seeking adult guidance. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Was Dad involved in something dangerous? Something that might have gotten him killed?" Jerome was quiet for a moment, and Roman could see the calculation in his eyes. This was the moment where Jerome would decide whether Lindsay was a potential asset or a liability. "Why do you ask that?" Jerome said finally. "Because I found things in his office. Hidden things." Lindsay pulled out a folder, one that Roman had carefully prepared with authentic-looking but ultimately harmless intelligence documents. These were in a secret compartment behind his bookshelf. "I don't understand what they are, but they look official." Jerome took the folder and examined its contents, his professional mask slipping slightly as he recognized the format and classification markings of genuine intelligence documents. The papers were authentic. Roman had access to plenty of declassified materials, but carefully selected to suggest ongoing operations without revealing anything truly sensitive. "Where exactly did you find these?" Jerome asked, his tone shifting subtly from concerned uncle to something more interrogative. "In a hidden panel. There were other things too, cash, passports with Dad's picture, but different names, some kind of electronic equipment." Lindsay was describing the contents of Roman's actual emergency cache, but one that he'd already evacuated and relocated. "Uncle Jerome, was my dad a spy?" Jerome studied her face carefully, looking for signs of deception. Lindsay met his gaze with a perfect mixture of fear, confusion, and desperate need for answers that any genuinely traumatized teenager would display. "Your father worked for the government in various capacities," Jerome said slowly. "Some of his work was classified, which is probably what you found. But Lindsay, this is exactly the kind of thing that could be dangerous if the wrong people knew about it." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if your father was targeted because of his work, then you and your mother could be in danger too. Especially if there are people who think you have access to sensitive information." Lindsay's eyes widened in perfectly calculated fear. "What should I do?" Jerome leaned back, and Roman could see the moment when Jerome made his decision. The girl was clearly unaware of her true parentage or the real nature of the operation. She was frightened, alone, and sitting on potentially valuable intelligence. Most importantly, she trusted Jerome implicitly. "First, you can't tell anyone else about what you found. Not the police, not your friends, not anyone." Jerome's voice carried a note of urgency. "Second, I think you and your mother should come stay with me for a while, just until we can figure out what's safe. Would you help me go through Dad's things? Maybe figure out what's important and what isn't. Lindsay's voice carried exactly the right note of desperate gratitude. I don't know who else to trust. Of course, sweetheart. We're family. Jerome reached across and patted her hand. Why don't you bring your mother and come to my house this weekend? We can sort through everything together and make sure you're both safe. As they made arrangements for the weekend visit, Roman allowed himself a moment of cold satisfaction. Jerome had taken the bait completely. He thought he was recruiting a traumatized asset and gaining access to potentially valuable intelligence materials. Instead, he was inviting Roman Reynolds directly into his center of operations. After Jerome left, Lindsay walked to the restroom and used a prearranged signal to confirm the meeting had gone according to plan. Roman's response was equally subtle, a specific ringtone on her phone that confirmed Phase 2 could proceed. That evening, Roman and Lindsay reviewed the intelligence they'd gathered from the cafe meeting. The directional microphone had picked up not just Jerome's conversation with Lindsay, but also a phone call he'd made immediately after leaving the cafe. The package is secured, Jerome had said in what Roman recognized as coded language. The secondary asset is cooperative and uninformed. Extraction this weekend for full debrief and assessment. Roman translated for Lindsay. He thinks he's collecting you and your mother for interrogation and recruitment. He's planning to extract whatever intelligence he thinks we have, then either recruit you into his network or eliminate you as a security risk. And instead, Lindsay asked, he's going to discover that he's brought a predator directly into his den, Roman said grimly. Jerome Massey has spent 3 years believing he was manipulating me. This weekend, he's going to learn what it feels like to be hunted by someone who's very, very good at it. Roman pulled up architectural plans on his computer, Jerome's house, obtained through public records and satellite imagery. He thinks he's bringing 2 frightened women to safety. Instead, he's about to face the man who spent 20 years perfecting the art of killing people who threaten what he loves. As they finalized their preparations, Roman felt the familiar calm that preceded a mission. Jerome Massey had made this personal when he'd targeted Roman's family. Now Roman was going to show him exactly why that had been a fatal mistake. Chapter 6. Into the Lion's Den. Jerome Massey's estate sat on 15 acres of wooded land in rural Virginia, far enough from civilization to ensure privacy, but close enough to major transportation hubs for operational flexibility. Roman had spent the week conducting surveillance, mapping security systems, and identifying escape routes. The property was well defended, but not impregnable. Jerome was confident in his operational security, but not paranoid enough to account for an enemy of Roman's caliber. On Saturday morning, Roman and Lindsay arrived at the estate in separate vehicles. Roman posed as a grieving widow's brother, complete with falsified documents and a carefully constructed backstory that would satisfy casual scrutiny. Lindsay rode with the woman who was supposed to be Thelma, actually Sarah Chun, a former military intelligence colleague who owed Roman several favors and specialized in deep cover operations. Jerome met them at the front door, playing the role of concerned family member to perfection. "I'm so glad you decided to come," he said, embracing the fake Thelma warmly. "You look terrible, Thel. This whole situation has been such a nightmare." Sarah Chun was good at her job. She portrayed a woman on the edge of breakdown, clinging to Jerome like a lifeline while maintaining the subtle tells that suggested she was hiding something important. To Jerome, she would appear to be exactly what he expected, a co-conspirator trying to maintain cover while processing the trauma of murdering her husband. "I keep thinking someone's watching us," Sarah murmured, glancing around nervously. "What if Roman's people know what we did? What if they're coming for us?" "That's why you're here," Jerome assured her. "This place is completely secure. We can talk freely and figure out our next steps." Roman, playing the role of grieving brother-in-law, maintained appropriate emotional distance while carefully cataloging the security measures he observed. Cameras at strategic points, motion sensors along the perimeter, and what appeared to be at least 2 armed guards positioned discreetly around the property. Professional setup, but Roman had penetrated far more sophisticated defenses. Jerome led them into a comfortable sitting room where he'd prepared refreshments and tissues, the props of someone expecting to comfort grieving family members. But Roman noticed the subtle details that revealed the room's true purpose. The chairs were positioned to prevent easy access to the doors. There were no potential weapons within reach, and the acoustics were wrong in a way that suggested electronic monitoring. "First, I want you both to know that you're safe here," Jerome began, settling into a chair that gave him clear sight lines to all entrances. "But I need to understand exactly what happened that night. The official police report says Roman was killed during a home invasion, but I'm concerned there might be more to it." Sarah, playing Thelma, broke down into convincing sobs. "It was supposed to be simple. Wait until he was asleep, make it look like an accident, then call for help. But he woke up somehow. He fought back. And the team I sent to assist you? All dead," Sarah said between sobs. "Roman killed them all. I've never seen anything like it. He wasn't the man I married, Jerome. He was something else. Something terrible." Jerome's expression darkened. 6 professional operators, and he killed them all? "It was like he knew they were coming," Sarah continued. "Like he was waiting for them. When it was over, he looked at me and said he knew about you, about the operation, about everything." Roman watched Jerome process this information, seeing the exact moment when suspicion began to override confidence. Jerome was beginning to realize that his carefully planned operation had encountered something unexpected. "Did he say anything else?" Jerome asked carefully. "He said he was going to find you," Sarah whispered. "He said he was going to make you pay for what you'd done to his family." "But he's dead," Jerome said, though uncertainty was creeping into his voice. "Is he?" Sarah looked up, meeting Jerome's eyes directly. "They never found his body, Jerome. The house burned down after I escaped. The police assumed he died in the fire, but what if?" She was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from somewhere else in the house, followed immediately by the sharp crack of gunfire. Jerome's eyes widened as he reached for the pistol under his jacket, but Roman was already moving. The grieving brother-in-law disappeared, replaced by the operator who had earned his reputation in the darkest corners of foreign wars. Roman's knife found Jerome's wrist before the pistol cleared its holster, and his other hand closed around Jerome's throat with precisely the right pressure to disable without killing. "Hello, Jerome," Roman said quietly as chaos erupted around them. "We need to talk." Jerome's eyes bulged with shock and terror as he recognized the voice of the man he believed dead. "Impossible," he gasped. "You're dead. Thelma killed you." "Thelma is in federal custody," Roman said conversationally as gunfire continued to echo through the house. "The woman you've been talking to is a professional, and the sound you're hearing are my team eliminating your security personnel." "Your team?" Roman smiled coldly. "Did you really think I spent 20 years in military intelligence without making friends? Loyal friends. The kind who don't appreciate foreign operatives targeting American assets." Through the window, Jerome could see figures in tactical gear moving with professional precision around his property. Roman's team was actually a mix of active-duty special operations personnel and retired intelligence operatives, all of whom had personal reasons to object to foreign infiltration of American intelligence networks. "Now," Roman continued, "you're going to tell me about your entire operation. Every family you've infiltrated, every asset you've recruited, every handler you report to, and when you're done, you're going to help me dismantle the whole network." "I'll never." Roman increased pressure on Jerome's throat just enough to demonstrate that cooperation wasn't optional. "Jerome, you've made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought you were dealing with a soft target, a suburban husband who could be eliminated quietly. Instead, you've declared war on someone who spent 2 decades perfecting the art of making people and organizations disappear." As the gunfire outside died down and Roman's team secured the property, Jerome finally understood the scope of his miscalculation. He hadn't just failed to assassinate Roman Reynolds. He'd given Roman every justification he needed to destroy an entire intelligence network. "You have one chance to cooperate," Roman said quietly. "Take it." Jerome looked into Roman's eyes and saw his own death reflected there. Not immediate death, something far worse. The slow, methodical destruction of everything he'd built, everyone he cared about, every safe harbor he'd established over decades of careful planning. He began to talk. Chapter 7. The Network Falls. Jerome's confession took 6 hours and filled 43 pages of transcribed text. By the time he finished, Roman had the complete organizational structure of a foreign intelligence network that had been operating on American soil for over 15 years. The scope was staggering. 27 families infiltrated, including high-ranking personnel at the CIA, DIA, NSA, and major defense contractors. Sleeper agents planted as spouses, children, and trusted family friends. Assets recruited through blackmail, coercion, and long-term manipulation. A sophisticated support network that included safe houses, communication systems, and extraction protocols. 63 active assets, Roman said, reviewing the intelligence while Jerome sat restrained in the chair across from him. 14 handlers, 6 safe houses, 2 primary communication hubs. He looked up at Jerome. Impressive operation. Too bad you picked the wrong family to target. Jerome had progressed through the stages of defeat over the course of his interrogation. Denial, anger, bargaining, and finally a resigned acceptance that his life's work was about to be destroyed. What happens now, he asked. Now I give you a choice, Roman said. Option 1. I turn this intelligence over to the FBI, and you spend the rest of your life in federal prison while your network scatters to the wind. Some of them escape, some of them get arrested, and the damage to American security continues for years while the courts sort everything out. And option 2? Roman's smile was cold as winter. Option 2. You help me eliminate every single asset, handler, and support structure in your network. Permanently. Completely. No trials. No appeals. No chance for anyone to escape or rebuild. Jerome stared at him in horror. You're talking about murdering 63 people. I'm talking about eliminating foreign intelligence operatives who have infiltrated American security systems, Roman corrected. Some of them might survive if they surrender immediately and provide full cooperation. Others, he shrugged. Others chose their fate when they decided to betray their country. You can't just execute people without due process. Roman leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Jerome, let me explain something about due process. For 20 years, I operated in places where due process was a luxury we couldn't afford. When enemy combatants threatened American lives, we eliminated them. When foreign agents threatened American security, we neutralized them. The only difference between what I did overseas and what I'm planning to do here is geography. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the wooded landscape where his team had finished cleaning up Jerome's security personnel. You've been treating this like a game, Jerome. Moving pieces around a board, manipulating families, destroying lives for the sake of intelligence and money. But this isn't a game. This is war. And in war, there are only 2 outcomes, victory or death. Roman turned back to Jerome, and his expression was utterly implacable. I'm offering you the chance to end this war quickly and quietly, with minimal collateral damage. Help me clean up your network, and some of your people might survive. Refuse, and I'll hunt them down one by one, starting with the ones closest to you. What about Lindsay? Jerome asked desperately. She's my daughter. Lindsay is my daughter, Roman said firmly. She chose loyalty over blood. She chose to protect her family over advancing your operation. She's earned the right to be safe from the consequences of your choices. Jerome was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, he asked, if I cooperate, what happens to me? You disappear, Roman said simply. New identity, relocated somewhere you can't cause any more damage. It's more mercy than you deserve, but Lindsay asked me to spare your life if possible. And if I don't cooperate, Roman's expression didn't change. Then you die slowly, after watching me destroy everyone you've ever worked with or cared about. I'll make sure you understand exactly how much damage your network caused before I finally put you out of your misery. Jerome closed his eyes, feeling the weight of decades of careful planning crashing down around him. He'd built something magnificent, a network that could have influenced American policy for generations. But he'd made one critical error. He'd underestimated Roman Reynolds. I'll need guarantees, Jerome said finally. Written assurances about protection for cooperative assets, relocation assistance, immunity from prosecution. You're not in a position to negotiate terms, Roman pointed out. Then you'll have to hunt down 63 people the hard way, Jerome said with a flash of his old confidence. Without my help, some of them will escape. Some of them will rebuild elsewhere. Your victory won't be complete. Roman considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. Limited immunity for assets who surrender voluntarily and provide full debriefings. Relocation assistance for those who cooperate completely. But handlers and support personnel are non-negotiable. They knew what they were doing. Agreed, Jerome said. Over the next 72 hours, Roman's expanded team, now including federal agents who specialized in counterintelligence operations, executed the most comprehensive roll-up of a foreign intelligence network in American history. Working from Jerome's detailed intelligence, they moved simultaneously against all 27 infiltrated families. Some of the operations went smoothly. Assets like Sarah Martinez, real name Katia Volkov, who had been posing as the wife of a Lockheed Martin engineer for 8 years, surrendered immediately when confronted with evidence of their activities. They were processed, debriefed, and relocated under new identities with the understanding that any future contact with foreign intelligence services would result in immediate termination. Other operations required more direct action. Handler Viktor Petrov, who had been coordinating West Coast operations from a safe house in Seattle, chose to fight rather than surrender. Roman personally led the team that eliminated him and his entire support cell. The official report would list it as a drug-related shooting, with no mention of foreign intelligence activities. The most challenging target was Dr. Elena Kozlov, who had spent 12 years posing as the wife of a CIA analyst while actually serving as a deep-cover intelligence officer for Russian foreign intelligence. When Roman's team moved on her safe house in McLean, Virginia, they discovered that she had anticipated exposure and prepared accordingly. Suicide vest, the team leader reported over comms. She's threatening to detonate if we don't withdraw. Roman, coordinating from the command vehicle, spoke directly to Elena through the team's communication system. Dr. Kozlov, this is Roman Reynolds. You have 30 seconds to surrender before I demonstrate why terrorist tactics don't work against someone with my background. You cannot stop us all, Elena replied in accented English. We are everywhere. We're your neighbors, your friends, your family. You cannot kill us all. Watch me, Roman said, and gave a signal. The sniper's bullet took Elena in the head before she could trigger the device, and the bomb disposal team secured the vest within minutes. As they processed the safe house, Roman felt the familiar cold satisfaction that came with eliminating a confirmed threat. By the end of the week, the network that Jerome had spent 15 years building was completely destroyed. 63 assets captured or eliminated. 14 handlers neutralized. 6 safe houses seized. 2 communication hubs dismantled. The damage to American security systems was being assessed and repaired by teams of cybersecurity specialists and counterintelligence analysts. It's over, Lindsay said as she reviewed the final reports with Roman in their hotel suite. They would be relocating soon. Their cover in the suburban neighborhood was blown, and they needed to disappear until the intelligence community finished processing the implications of the operation. This network is over, Roman corrected. There will be others. There always are. Will you hunt them too? Roman looked at his daughter, the girl who had chosen loyalty over blood, who had risked everything to protect her family, who had helped him destroy an intelligence network that threatened national security. She deserved honesty. If they threaten what I love, he said simply, yes. I will hunt them all. Chapter 8. Sins of the Father. 2 weeks after the network's destruction, Roman received a message that changed everything. Jerome had escaped federal custody. The details were sketchy, but the basic facts were clear. During transport to a secure facility for final processing, Jerome's vehicle had been ambushed by unknown attackers. 2 federal agents were dead, and Jerome had vanished without trace. Inside job, concluded FBI Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, the lead investigator on the case. Someone with access to transport schedules and routes. Professional operation, probably foreign intelligence using assets we haven't identified yet. Roman studied the crime scene photos in their temporary safe house, his expression growing darker with each image. This wasn't just an escape, it was a message. Jerome's handlers were telling Roman that the war wasn't over. Dad! Lindsay's voice carried a note of concern that had become familiar over the past weeks. What does this mean? It means Jerome lied to us, Roman said grimly. The network was larger than he admitted. There were people he didn't tell us about, support structures we didn't identify. And now, they have him back. Roman's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an untraceable number. You took our family. Now we'll take yours. Jerome sends his regards. The message included a photograph that made Roman's blood run cold. It showed their old house, the one they'd abandoned after the assassination attempt, but taken recently. Someone had been watching the property, studying it, learning their patterns even after they'd relocated. They know where we used to live, Roman said, showing Lindsay the message. They know our routines, our contacts, our escape routes. Jerome had more time to study us than we realized. So what do? Roman was quiet for a moment, considering options. The traditional approach would be to go deeper underground, disappear completely, and hope the intelligence agencies could eventually track down Jerome and his remaining handlers. But Roman had learned over the years that running from enemies only encouraged them to chase harder. We end this permanently, he said finally. Jerome wants to play games with my family? I'm going to show him what happens when he threatens the people I love. Roman's plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of hiding, he would use himself and Lindsay as bait to draw Jerome and his remaining handlers into a trap. But this time, the trap will be designed not just to capture them, but to eliminate any possibility of future retaliation. I'm not letting you use yourself as bait, Lindsay said when Roman explained the plan. And I'm definitely not going to be some helpless victim waiting to be rescued. Lindsay, no, Dad. I've been trained by the best, she said, referring to the combat and tactical training Roman had given her over the years. I can shoot, I can fight, and I can think tactically. If we're going to end this, we're going to do it together. Roman looked at his daughter, 17 years old now, but with the steady nerves and cold judgment of someone much older. The girl who had warned him about the assassination attempt had grown into a young woman who could handle herself in dangerous situations. Together, then, he agreed, but we do this my way, with my rules and my level of ruthlessness. The trap was elaborate and multi-layered, designed to account for every possible response Jerome and his handlers might attempt. Roman leaked information through carefully monitored channels, suggesting that he and Lindsay would be attending a memorial service for the federal agents killed during Jerome's escape. The service was real, but Roman's attendance was fiction, part of a deception designed to draw his enemies into a killing ground of his choosing. The actual bait was much more subtle. Roman arranged for Lindsay to be accidentally spotted at Georgetown University, apparently enrolling for early admission courses. To any surveillance team, it would appear that Roman was trying to give his daughter a normal life while maintaining minimal security protocols. Jerome took the bait exactly as Roman had predicted. The first attempt came on a Tuesday evening as Lindsay walked across campus after a lecture. 3 men in a stolen van tried to grab her in broad daylight, clearly expecting a quick snatch-and-grab operation against a teenage girl with minimal protection. They discovered their error when Lindsay drew the concealed pistol Roman had trained her to use and put 2 rounds center mass into the lead attacker before diving behind a concrete barrier. The other 2 attackers found themselves facing not just an armed and trained teenager, but also Roman's support team, which had been shadowing Lindsay from concealed positions. The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, 2 attackers were dead and the third was wounded and in custody. But Roman wasn't satisfied. This had been a probing attack, designed to test their defenses and identify their capabilities. Jerome's learning, Roman told Lindsay as they reviewed tactical footage of the incident. He's adapting to our capabilities. The next attempt will be more sophisticated. The next attempt came 2 days later, and it was indeed more sophisticated. Instead of a direct assault, Jerome's remaining handlers tried psychological warfare. They released fabricated evidence suggesting that Roman had been working with foreign intelligence services himself, that his entire military career had been a cover for treason, and that the recent network destruction had been designed to eliminate competition rather than protect American interests. The disinformation campaign was professional and well-crafted, designed to turn American intelligence agencies against Roman and isolate him from official support. For a brief period, it worked. Several of Roman's government contacts stopped returning his calls, and Agent Mitchell informed him that he was being investigated for possible foreign connections. But Roman had anticipated this kind of attack and prepared accordingly. Over the years, he had maintained relationships with retired intelligence personnel who knew his true character and could vouch for his loyalty. More importantly, he had documented evidence of Jerome's network that proved beyond any doubt which side he was actually fighting for. Character assassination, Roman explained to Lindsay as they watched the false accusations spread through social media and alternative news sites. Classic technique when you can't eliminate someone physically. Turn their own people against them. Will it work? Roman smiled coldly. Jerome is about to discover that I have friends in very high places, and that some of those friends have been waiting for an excuse to eliminate foreign intelligence operations on American soil with extreme prejudice. The counter-disinformation campaign was swift and devastating. Within 48 hours, Jerome's fabricated evidence had been thoroughly debunked by independent analysts, and the sources of the false information had been traced back to known foreign intelligence assets. Instead of turning American agencies against Roman, the campaign had actually provided them with evidence of ongoing foreign intelligence activities that required immediate response. Authorization granted, Agent Mitchell informed Roman during a secure video conference. Full operational authority to eliminate Jerome Massey and any remaining network assets by any means necessary. No restrictions, no oversight, no questions asked afterward. Roman had been given what amounted to a hunting license from the United States government. Jerome Massey was now officially considered an enemy combatant operating on American soil, and Roman Reynolds was authorized to eliminate him using whatever methods he deemed appropriate. Where is he? Roman asked. Best intelligence suggests he's operating from a compound in rural West Virginia, Mitchell replied. Remote location, multiple escape routes, heavily defended. He's planning something big. Our sources suggest a major operation designed to retaliate for the network destruction. Roman studied the satellite imagery of Jerome's compound, his tactical mind automatically cataloging approaches, defenses, and vulnerabilities. This would be more than just a rescue operation or a simple elimination. This would be a direct assault against a fortified position defended by experienced operators. How many people? Roman asked. At least 12, possibly as many as 20. Mix of foreign intelligence operatives and hired mercenaries. Well-armed, well-trained, highly motivated. Roman nodded slowly. This was exactly the kind of operation he'd specialized in during his military career. High-risk assault against defended positions with minimal friendly casualties and maximum enemy elimination. I'll need a team, Roman said. You'll have whatever you need, Mitchell assured him. This is now a national security priority. Jerome Massey and his network have been classified as a clear and present danger to the United States. Eliminate them. As Roman began planning the assault, he felt the familiar cold clarity that preceded major operations. This wasn't just about protecting his family anymore. This was about ending a threat to American security that had been operating undetected for over a decade. Jerome Massey had made a fundamental error when he decided to target Roman Reynolds. He thought he was dealing with a soft suburban target who could be manipulated and eliminated. Instead, he declared war on someone who spent 20 years perfecting the art of eliminating people who threatened American interests. Now Jerome was about to learn the difference between intelligence operations and military operations. The difference between manipulation and direct action. The difference between thinking you're a predator and actually meeting one. Chapter 9, Final Justice. The assault on Jerome's compound began at 0300 hours on a moonless night in late October. Roman led a team of 12 elite operators, a mix of active-duty special forces personnel and retired intelligence operatives who had volunteered for what was officially classified as a counterterrorism operation against foreign assets. Jerome had chosen his location well. The compound sat in a valley surrounded by wooded hills, with clear sight lines in all directions and multiple escape routes through underground tunnels. Motion sensors and infrared cameras provided early warning, while strategically placed obstacles would channel any assault force into predetermined kill zones. It was exactly the kind of defensive position that would stop a conventional attack cold. Unfortunately for Jerome, Roman Reynolds had never been conventional. Overwatch in position came the voice of his sniper team leader, Sarah Chun, who had volunteered to provide long-range support from a ridgeline 800 meters away. I count 14 targets visible, probable additional personnel in the main building. Roger that, Overwatch. Phoenix team, status report. Phoenix team ready, responded Marcus Webb, leading the four-man element that would assault the compound from the north. Charges placed on target building. Awaiting your signal. Shadow team ready, added Lisa Park, whose team would handle the tunnel systems. Multiple escape routes identified and covered. Roman checked his equipment one final time. Assault rifle, sidearm, grenades, breaching charges, and the specialized ammunition he developed during his military career for dealing with body armor and hardened targets. Everything was configured for maximum lethality with minimum collateral damage. All teams, this is Control, Roman said into his radio. Execute Operation Payback in 30 seconds. Remember, no quarter, no prisoners, no survivors. These people have been operating on American soil for over a decade, and they killed federal agents during their escape. They forfeited any right to mercy. The assault began with Sarah's sniper rifle eliminating the 2 sentries on the compound's perimeter in quick succession. Before Jerome's people could react to the loss of their early warning system, Roman's breaching charges destroyed the main gate, and Phoenix team was pouring through the gap with automatic weapons blazing. Jerome had trained his people well. They responded to the assault with professional competence, falling back to prepare positions and laying down disciplined covering fire. But they were defending against someone who had spent 20 years studying how to break exactly this kind of defense. Roman moved through the compound like death incarnate, his rifle finding targets with mechanical precision while his team eliminated defenders with ruthless efficiency. The defenders were good, but Roman's team was better, and they had the advantage of surprise, superior equipment, and absolute motivation. Building secured, reported Phoenix team leader Webb. 6 enemy Kia, no friendly casualties. Tunnel systems secured, added Shadow team leader Park. 2 enemy eliminated attempting to escape through the underground route. No escapees. Roman reached the main building and kicked in the door, finding Jerome Massey in what appeared to be a command center filled with communications equipment, computers, and wall-mounted displays showing surveillance footage from around the compound. Jerome stood behind a desk with his hands raised, clearly recognizing that resistance was futile. Roman, Jerome said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. I have to admit, I underestimated you from the beginning. Yes, you did, Roman replied, keeping his rifle trained on Jerome's center mass. You thought you were dealing with a soft, suburban target. Instead, you declared war on someone who's very, very good at war. I suppose you're here to kill me. That was the plan, Roman said. But first, you're going to tell me about the operation you've been planning. The major retaliation my sources have been tracking. Jerome smiled, and Roman recognized the expression of someone who believed they still held winning cards. You think this compound is the end of it? You think eliminating my network was a victory? Roman, you have no idea what you've really accomplished. Enlighten me. You've proven that American intelligence networks are vulnerable to infiltration and manipulation. You've demonstrated that private citizens can conduct military operations on American soil without meaningful government oversight. Most importantly, you've shown foreign intelligence services exactly how to identify, target, and eliminate American intelligence personnel. Jerome gestured to the equipment around them. Everything that's happened here, every technique you've used, every tactical decision you've made, has been recorded and transmitted to intelligence services in Moscow, Beijing, Tehran, and a dozen other capitals. You think you've been protecting American security? You've actually been providing foreign powers with a masterclass in how to destroy it. Roman felt a chill of recognition. Jerome was right. Every tactical technique, every operational methodology, every security protocol Roman had employed during the network destruction had been observed and analyzed by hostile intelligence services. Instead of protecting American security, Roman had inadvertently provided enemies with detailed intelligence about American counterintelligence capabilities. "You're lying," Roman said, but doubt was creeping into his voice. "Check the computers," Jerome said confidently. "Everything has been live-streamed to secure servers around the world. Your face, your methods, your team's capabilities, all of it now part of training materials being distributed to foreign intelligence academies." Roman moved to the nearest computer terminal while keeping his weapon trained on Jerome. The screen showed active video feeds being transmitted to multiple international locations, along with analytical software that was cataloging and categorizing every aspect of the assault in real time. "Months of planning," Jerome continued. "The entire network, the assassination attempt, even my escape from federal custody, all of it designed to draw you into exactly this kind of operation. You're not hunting us, Roman. We're studying you." Roman's finger tightened on the trigger as he realized the full scope of Jerome's deception. The man hadn't just infiltrated Roman's family. He manipulated Roman himself into becoming an intelligence asset for foreign powers. "Last words?" Roman asked. Jerome's smile widened. "Look behind you." Roman spun around to find Lindsay standing in the doorway of the command center, but she wasn't alone. Flanking her were two armed men Roman didn't recognize, and Lindsay's hands were bound behind her back. "Hello, Father," Lindsay said, but her voice carried an accent that hadn't been there before, the same accent Roman had heard during Jerome's phone conversations. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about family loyalty." Roman's world tilted as he realized the final, devastating truth. Lindsay hadn't been an unwilling asset or an innocent victim. She'd been a deep-cover operative from the beginning, placed with Thelma when she was still a baby and raised specifically to infiltrate Roman's life. 16 years, Lindsay continued, her voice now cold and professional. 16 years of pretending to be your daughter, learning your methods, studying your capabilities, waiting for the moment when you would finally reveal your true potential. "The warning," Roman said, understanding flooding through him. "You warned me about the assassination attempt." "Because the assassination was never meant to succeed," Lindsay replied. "It was designed to activate you, to force you to reveal the full extent of your training and capabilities. Every decision you've made since that night has been observed, recorded, and analyzed by intelligence services around the world." Roman raised his rifle, but hesitated as he looked at the girl he'd raised as his daughter for 16 years. Despite everything, the betrayal, the manipulation, the lies, some part of him still saw the child who had asked him to help with homework, who had sought his comfort during nightmares, who had learned to drive in his car. "I do love you, you know," Lindsay said softly. "In my own way. You taught me right from wrong, just like you said. You show me what real strength looks like. But you also taught me that family is about choice, not genetics. And I've chosen my real family." "Your real family?" Roman asked. "The intelligence service that gave me purpose," Lindsay replied. "The mission that gave my life meaning. The cause that's bigger than any one person or country." Roman felt the last pieces of his old life crumbling away. His wife had been an enemy agent. His daughter was a deep-cover operative. His family had been alive from the very beginning. But as he stood in that command center, surrounded by enemies and facing the ultimate betrayal, Roman felt something unexpected: relief. The guilt he'd carried about potentially putting Lindsay in danger, the concern about her emotional well-being, the careful balance between training her for dangerous situations while trying to preserve her innocence. All of it was suddenly irrelevant. Lindsay wasn't his daughter. She was an enemy combatant who had spent 16 years infiltrating his life and stealing his secrets. and Roman Reynolds had spent 20 years learning how to eliminate enemy combatants with extreme prejudice. "Thank you," Roman said quietly. "For what?" Lindsay asked, momentarily confused by his calm response. "For finally giving me permission to stop holding back." Roman's transformation was instantaneous and absolute. The conflicted father disappeared, replaced by the apex predator who had earned his reputation in the darkest corners of foreign wars. His rifle came up within human speed, and his first shot took down one of Lindsay's guards before anyone could react. The second guard tried to use Lindsay as a shield, but Roman's second shot went through her shoulder and into the guard center mass. Lindsay screamed and fell as Jerome tried to draw a concealed weapon, but Roman's third shot ended that threat permanently. As Lindsay lay on the floor, bleeding but alive, she looked up at Roman with a mixture of pain and something that might have been respect. "You really are everything they said you were," she gasped. "And you're exactly what I spent 20 years learning to eliminate," Roman replied. "An enemy asset operating on American soil. So what happens now?" Lindsay asked. Roman looked down at the girl who had pretended to be his daughter for 16 years, who had manipulated his emotions and stolen his secrets, who had been willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of her mission. She was wounded, but not critically, and she was still valuable as an intelligence asset. But Roman Reynolds never forgave betrayal, and he never forgot those who threatened what he loved. Lindsay had made her choice when she'd chosen her real family over the man who had raised her. "Now you learn the difference between thinking you're a predator and actually meeting one," Roman said, and pulled the trigger one final time. As the echoes of the gunshot faded through the compound, Roman stood alone among the bodies of his enemies. His radio crackled with status reports from his team. All hostiles eliminated, no friendly casualties, compound secured. "Control, this is Overwatch," came Sarah Chen's voice. "Confirm mission status." Roman looked around the command center one last time, taking in the computers that had recorded his every move, the communication equipment that had transmitted intelligence to foreign powers, and the bodies of the people who had spent years manipulating and betraying him. "Mission complete," Roman said into his radio. "All objectives eliminated. No survivors." As his team began the process of destroying the compound and eliminating any evidence of foreign intelligence activities, Roman felt the familiar cold satisfaction that came with completing a successful operation. The network that had infiltrated his life was completely destroyed. The people who had betrayed him were dead. The threat to American security had been neutralized. But most importantly, Roman Reynolds had proven once again why he was the man other operators called when every other option had failed. He was the final solution, the ultimate predator, the one who never forgave and never forgot. And anyone who threatened what he loved learned that lesson exactly once. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Thank you for joining us at Infidelity Tales Lab today. Your presence means the world to us. Tell us, which corner of the globe are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Whispers of Betrayal. The clock on the dashboard read 2:37 p.m. when Vincent Mercer pulled into the parking garage of his luxury apartment building. He wasn't supposed to be home for another 4 hours, but that was the point of his surprise. Today marked 5 years of marriage to Natalie, and he'd managed to wrap up his business meetings early to celebrate properly. Vincent was 35, with broad shoulders and the kind of confidence that came from building a security consulting firm from scratch. 10 years ago, he'd been discharged from the Marines after an injury, carrying nothing but specialized training and unshakable determination. Now, Mercer Security Solutions had contracts with half the corporations in the city. Success hadn't softened him, though. Beneath his tailored suits and polished exterior lay the same calculating mind that had once planned military operations. The small velvet box in his pocket contained a diamond necklace that had cost more than his first car. A matching set of plane tickets to Bali was tucked in his wallet. Vincent smiled to himself, imagining Natalie's reaction. At 32, his wife had the kind of beauty that turned heads. Honey blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile that had knocked him sideways the moment they'd met at a charity gala. Their marriage wasn't perfect. Whose was? But they'd weathered the rough patches. The last year had been especially strained after Natalie's third miscarriage. The doctors had been pessimistic about future pregnancies, and Vincent had thrown himself into work partly to avoid the hollow look in his wife's eyes. Maybe this trip would help them reconnect. He nodded to the doorman and took the private elevator up to their penthouse on the 30th floor. The ride gave him time to loosen his tie and rehearse what he might say. Vincent wasn't a man comfortable with flowery declarations, but anniversaries called for effort. The elevator doors opened directly into their foyer. He expected silence. Natalie usually spent afternoons at her art studio downtown, but the sound of laughter floated through the apartment. Feminine giggles, punctuated by a deeper voice. Vincent frowned. They rarely had unannounced visitors. Setting his briefcase down silently by the door, he followed the sounds toward their bedroom. The laughter grew louder, accompanied by whispers too low to make out. His hand hovered over the door handle. Something primal in his gut screamed warning. The same instinct that had once saved his life in a desert halfway across the world. Vincent pushed the door open. The scene before him burned into his memory like acid. Natalie, his wife, straddling a man on their bed, both partially undressed. But it wasn't just any man. It was Douglas Preston, Natalie's 53-year-old father, his hands gripping her waist. They froze at the sound of the door. Douglas's face drained of color. "Just a back rub," he stammered, scrambling to pull his shirt closed. Natalie didn't bother with excuses. She stared at Vincent, blue eyes defiant, chin tilted upward in that stubborn way he once found endearing. Vincent's gaze swept the room mechanically, training kicking in as he cataloged details. Discarded clothing, rumpled sheets, empty wine glasses, and there on the nightstand a plastic stick with a small window showing 2 pink lines, a pregnancy test. The room spun briefly. The test. The father-in-law. The pieces assembled themselves into a grotesque puzzle. 5 years, Vincent said, his voice unnaturally calm. The velvet box burned in his pocket. "Vincent, you're home early," Natalie said, finally breaking her silence. She made no move to cover herself, as if dignity were now irrelevant. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" Vincent's laugh was hollow. "Because it looks like my wife is fucking her father, and apparently I might be congratulating you both on a baby." Douglas finally found his voice. "Listen, son, I'm not your son." Vincent cut him off, each word like ice. "And she is no longer my wife." "Don't be dramatic," Natalie sighed, climbing off the bed. "We could talk about this like adults." Vincent's mind raced through scenarios, calculations, contingencies. The military had taught him to respond to ambushes with precision, not emotion. "How long?" Douglas and Natalie exchanged glances. 2 years, she admitted finally. "It just happened. 2 years. Half their marriage." "Get dressed," Vincent said. "Both of you. You have 10 minutes to leave before I call the police and report this situation." "You can't just throw me out of my own home," Natalie protested. "Your name isn't on the lease or the mortgage," Vincent reminded her. "I made sure of that after your gambling problem 3 years ago. This is legally my apartment." Douglas was hurriedly buttoning his shirt. "Natalie, maybe we should go to my place, let things cool down." Vincent stepped back from the doorway. 9 minutes now. He walked to the living room, removed his phone, and called his lawyer, Russell Bennett, an old military buddy who'd gone to law school after discharge. "I need emergency legal counsel. My wife's been having an affair. I want divorce papers drawn up immediately." As he spoke, he heard hurried movements from the bedroom, hushed arguments. Vincent opened his home safe and removed key documents, their prenuptial agreement, financial records, passport. By the time Natalie and Douglas emerged, suitcases hastily packed, he was sitting calmly on the couch, a glass of scotch in hand. "Vincent, please," Natalie tried one more time. "Let's not be hasty." "Is it mine?" he asked, nodding toward her still flat stomach. Her silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought." Vincent raised his glass in mock toast. Happy anniversary, Natalie. After they left, Vincent sat in perfect stillness, the scotch untouched, his mind working. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. And Vincent Mercer had never lost a war. Chapter 2. The Chess Players. Vincent spent the night reviewing security footage from the building's cameras. As the head of a security firm, he'd installed additional surveillance in the penthouse after a break-in attempt last year. Most people, including Natalie, didn't realize the full extent of the system. The recordings confirmed his worst fears. Douglas had been visiting regularly when Vincent traveled for business. Sometimes Natalie's mother, Eleanor, accompanied him, sitting in the living room, oblivious, while her husband made excuses to check on something in another room. Jesus, Vincent muttered, watching months of betrayal compressed into hours of footage. The scotch bottle beside him was now half empty. His phone buzzed with messages from Natalie, alternating between pleas and threats. He blocked her number without reading them. At 7 a.m., Russell Bennett arrived, looking grave in his charcoal suit. "I've drafted preliminary divorce papers," he said, setting his briefcase on the counter. "But there's something else you should know." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "I had my investigator do some digging overnight. Your in-laws have been having financial problems. Douglas's investment firm is under SEC investigation. They've been hemorrhaging client funds for months." Vincent's jaw tightened. "And let me guess, Natalie's been helping Daddy Dearest with cash infusions from our accounts." Russell nodded. "About $1.2 million over the past year. She had access to your joint accounts." "That explains the sudden interest in our financial statements," Vincent said, remembering how Natalie had volunteered to handle their banking in recent months. "She never cared about money before, just spent it." "There's more," Russell continued. "The Preston family has a history of unusual relationships. Douglas's own father apparently had an affair with his stepdaughter years ago. It was hushed up, but my guy found court records." Vincent felt nauseated. "A family tradition, then? What do you want to do?" Russell asked. "We have grounds for divorce based on adultery. The prenup is clear. She gets nothing in case of infidelity. But with the money she's taken and the potential complexities of the pregnancy, things could get messy. I want everything documented," Vincent said, his military precision taking over. "The affair, the financial theft, all of it. But I don't want to file immediately." Russell looked surprised. "Why wait?" "Because Douglas and Eleanor Preston fancy themselves as chess players," Vincent said, refilling his glass. "But they've never played against someone who doesn't care about losing pieces to win the game." Later that morning, Vincent received an unexpected visitor. Eleanor Preston stood at his door, her normally perfect appearance showing signs of strain, smudged makeup, hair hastily styled. "May I come in?" she asked stiffly. Vincent stepped aside. Eleanor had always been cold toward him, a society woman who'd thought her daughter was marrying beneath her status despite his financial success. "I assume this is about your husband and my wife," Vincent said, not bothering with pleasantries. Eleanor flinched. "It's not what you think. Douglas has been unwell. His judgment has been affected by medication." "Is that the story you're going with?" Vincent asked, almost pitying her desperate attempt. "Natalie says you're refusing to speak with her," Eleanor continued. "She's distraught. The stress isn't good for the baby." "The baby that's not mine?" Vincent watched her face carefully. Eleanor's expression flickered. "Of course it's yours. Don't be ridiculous." "Eleanor, I've seen the security footage from this apartment. I know how long this has been going on." The color drained from her face. "You've been spying on your own wife. I've been securing my home, which happens to have recorded your husband's visits." Vincent pulled up a video on his tablet and turned it toward her. The timestamp showed Douglas entering the bedroom where Natalie was showering 2 months ago. Eleanor's hands trembled as she pushed the tablet away. "Turn it off." "Did you know?" Vincent asked quietly. "Know what?" Her voice was brittle. "About them. About the fact that your husband has been sleeping with your daughter. About the money they've been siphoning from my accounts to cover his investment losses." Eleanor's silence was damning. "I thought so," Vincent said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave here and tell them that I'm devastated, drinking heavily, and talking about moving out of state. that I mentioned something about transferring assets before filing for divorce. Why would I do that? Eleanor asked. Because if you don't, the SEC investigation into Douglas will receive an anonymous tip about exactly where missing client funds went, along with video evidence of some very taboo behavior that I imagine his business associates would find disturbing. Eleanor stood, straightening her designer jacket with trembling hands. You've always been cruel beneath that polished exterior. My daughter deserved better. Vincent laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Your daughter deserved exactly what she's about to get. After she left, Vincent called Russell again. I need you to set up a meeting with Eleanor Preston's lawyer. Her name is Diane Holdsworth. What for? Russell asked. I'm going to need allies where they least expect them, Vincent replied, already formulating the next phase of his plan. Chapter 3, Bloodlines. The DNA testing facility was sterile and efficient. Vincent sat in the waiting room, watching people come and go, couples looking nervous, men trying to appear casual, women with tight expressions. Everyone here was seeking confirmation of something they already suspected. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Natalie. Please don't do this. The baby is yours. Let's talk. Vincent deleted it without responding. Instead, he pulled up the email from his private investigator. Douglas Preston's financials were even worse than initially thought. His firm had lost over $30 million in client funds through a series of catastrophically bad investments. The SEC was circling, and criminal charges were likely forthcoming. The pieces were coming together. Douglas needed money and a way to disappear if necessary. Natalie, always desperate for her father's approval, had been the perfect accomplice, and apparently much more. Mr. Mercer? A technician called his name. We're ready for you. The procedure was simple. A cheek swab, some paperwork stating his reason for DNA comparison. Vincent had provided one of Natalie's hairbrushes with strands still attached. It would be enough to establish maternal DNA markers. Results take 5 to 7 business days, the technician informed him. I've paid for the expedited service, Vincent reminded her. Then 48 hours. We'll email and call you. Back in his car, Vincent found another message waiting, this time from Douglas. We need to discuss this situation like gentlemen. There's a reasonable explanation for everything. Vincent almost admired the man's audacity. He started the car and drove to his next appointment. Diane Holdsworth's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown building. Unlike Russell's practical, understated offices, Diane favored modern art and dramatic views, all designed to intimidate clients and opponents alike. Mr. Mercer, she greeted him, perfectly coiffed and sharply dressed. This is unusual. You're aware I represent Eleanor Preston. I am, Vincent replied, taking the offered seat. That's why I'm here. Diane raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. I don't see how I can help you, given the circumstances. Vincent placed a USB drive on her desk. On this drive is evidence that Douglas Preston has been embezzling from clients for years. It's also evidence that he's been having a sexual relationship with his daughter, my wife, resulting in her current pregnancy. Diane's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing genuine shock. That's a very serious allegation. It's not an allegation. It's documented fact. Vincent leaned forward. Eleanor knows. She's been covering for them, possibly for years. But she didn't know about the extent of the financial fraud. Why are you bringing this to me? Diane asked carefully. Because Eleanor is going to need representation separate from Douglas once the SEC investigation becomes public. She'll need someone to help her distance herself from his crimes and proclivities. Diane steepled her fingers. And you're providing this information out of concern for your mother-in-law? Vincent smiled thinly. I'm providing it because Eleanor is about to become a useful ally against her own husband and daughter. She values her social standing above everything. When she realizes they're going down and taking her with them, she'll do anything to save herself, including turning on her family, Diane concluded. That's quite Machiavellian of you, Mr. Mercer. I prefer strategic, Vincent replied. Douglas and Natalie think they're playing a game. They don't realize it's already over. And what do you want from me in this arrangement? Information. When Eleanor comes to you in panic, and she will within the week. I want to know what she says, what she knows, and what she's willing to do. Diane's expression hardened. That would be a violation of attorney-client privilege. Vincent nodded to the USB. There's also evidence they're suggesting you helped Eleanor hide assets during her previous divorce 20 years ago. Nothing conclusive, but enough to warrant investigation. The attorney's face remained impassive, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her desk. You've been thorough. I protect what's mine, Vincent said simply. Douglas and Natalie forgot that. As Vincent left the building, his phone rang. The DNA testing facility. Mr. Mercer? We've processed your preliminary results. There's something unusual in the markers. Could you come back in? Our genetic counselor would like to speak with you. Vincent felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The genetic counselor was a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Levinson. She pulled up results on her computer screen, pointing to highlighted sections. We were able to extract sufficient DNA from both samples, she explained. The unusual finding is this pattern here. It indicates a genetic relationship between the maternal and paternal lines that's closer than typical. Meaning, the genetic markers suggest the father of this pregnancy shares DNA with the mother. They're likely related. First-degree relatives, in fact. Vincent had expected it, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a physical blow. Her father, Dr. Levinson, nodded uncomfortably. That would be consistent with these findings. Mr. Mercer, I should inform you that we're mandatory reporters in cases where genetic testing suggests inappropriate relationships, especially when a pregnancy is involved. I understand, Vincent said. I'll be filing police reports myself. Can I get those results in writing? 20 minutes later, Vincent sat in his car, staring at the official letterhead confirming his suspicions. His phone buzzed again, Natalie from another new number. He declined to call. Instead, he called Russell. I need you to draft documents for a restraining order. And contact that detective you know, Miller. Tell him I have evidence of financial crimes and other matters that require police attention. You're moving forward with everything? Russell asked. Yes, Vincent replied, his voice hardening as he started the car. It's time to show them what happens when you declare war on the wrong enemy. Chapter 4. Shifting Alliances. Vincent stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the 40th floor of the financial district's most prestigious building. Below, the city sprawled in miniature, people and cars moving like toys. It had been 3 weeks since the discovery, and the initial shock had hardened into resolute purpose. His phone chimed with a message from Detective Miller. Arrest warrant issued for D. Preston. SEC has frozen all accounts. Moving in tomorrow morning. Vincent allowed himself a small, grim smile. Phase 1 complete. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Lydia, entered with a concerned expression. Mr. Mercer, Mrs. Preston, Eleanor, is here. She doesn't have an appointment. Send her in, Vincent replied, straightening his tie. Eleanor looked considerably less polished than their last meeting. Her designer clothes remained, but her face showed the strain of recent weeks, new lines around her eyes, a tightness to her mouth. I didn't expect to see you here, Vincent said, not offering her a seat. She took one anyway. Diane told me what you did. Did she? Vincent raised an eyebrow. That's unfortunate for her career. Don't be smug. She didn't violate confidentiality. I figured it out myself when the SEC investigators mentioned an anonymous source with detailed transaction records. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. They're arresting Douglas tomorrow. I'm aware. They're also investigating Natalie as a co-conspirator. Vincent poured himself a glass of water, not offering one to his guest. Also part of the plan. Eleanor's composure cracked. She's pregnant, Vincent. With her father's child, he replied coldly. A fact confirmed by DNA testing, which I've shared with the authorities. Eleanor flinched as if struck. You don't understand. This isn't Natalie's fault. Douglas has always controlled her. Since she was young. He has a hold over her that I've never been able to break. Vincent's eye narrowed. What exactly are you saying, Eleanor? I'm saying this relationship didn't start 2 years ago. It started when she was 16. Eleanor's voice broke. I found them once. Douglas convinced me it was a one-time mistake. I believed him because the alternative was unthinkable. I've been lying to myself for years. Vincent felt physically ill. And you stay with him? Let your daughter marry someone else without warning them? I thought it was over. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. When she met you, she seemed happy, independent. Douglas appeared to have backed off. I thought she was finally free. Vincent sat down heavily. This was worse than he'd imagined. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need your help, Eleanor admitted. Diane says I could be implicated too, as an accessory for knowing and not reporting. I could lose everything. That was the idea, Vincent said coldly. Please, Eleanor begged, her pride finally breaking. I'll testify against Douglas. I'll sign whatever you need for the divorce. Just help me stay out of prison. Vincent studied her, this woman who had looked down on him for years, who had protected a monster rather than her own daughter. Yet beneath his disgust, the strategic part of his mind recognized an opportunity. I'll consider it, he said finally, but I'll need something in return. Anything, Eleanor said quickly. All of Douglas's records, financial, personal, everything. And I want you to wear a wire the next time you speak with him or Natalie. Eleanor paled. You want me to record my own daughter? I want evidence of coercion if what you're saying is true, Vincent clarified. If Natalie was victimized, that should be documented. If she was a willing participant in defrauding me and others, that should be documented too. After Eleanor left, Vincent called Russell. We need to adjust the strategy. There's a new angle to consider. The next morning, Vincent watched the news coverage of Douglas Preston being led from his office in handcuffs. The financial charges were public, but the more sordid allegations remained sealed for now. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and Douglas's once prestigious reputation crumbled in real time. Vincent's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Mercer, a young female voice said when he answered. My name is Olivia Preston. I was Douglas's administrative assistant. Vincent frowned. How did you get this number, Miss Preston? That's just it, she said, her voice shaking. Preston isn't my real name. Douglas made me change it when he hired me 3 years ago. He said it was better for the company image if people thought I was family. What's your real name? Olivia Campos. Mr. Mercer, I have information about Douglas and your wife that I think you should know. But I'm afraid. He has connections. People who could hurt me. Vincent's instincts sharpened. Where are you now? At a coffee shop near the office. Everyone's in chaos with the arrests and the SEC people everywhere. Stay there. I'll send someone to bring you to my office. A woman named Lydia. She'll be there in 15 minutes. After hanging up, Vincent called his head of security, a former Army Ranger named Trent. I need a protection detail for a potential witness. And run a background check on Olivia Campos, approximately 25 to 30 years old, worked for Douglas Preston. Within the hour, Olivia sat in Vincent's private conference room. She was younger than he expected, maybe 24, with dark hair and nervous eyes that kept darting to the door. You're safe here, Vincent assured her. This building has better security than most government facilities. Olivia nodded, clutching her coffee cup. I should have come forward sooner, but I was afraid. Douglas, he has evidence that could send my brother to prison for something he didn't do. Blackmail, Vincent noted. A pattern with him. He blackmails everyone, Olivia confirmed. It's how he keeps control. He has files, digital and physical, on clients, employees, family members. Even Natalie. Vincent leaned forward. What kind of files on Natalie? Videos, mostly, going back years. And correspondence, emails, texts. He made me organize them. She looked down in shame. I think he was documenting the relationship for some reason. Insurance, maybe. Or leverage, Vincent said grimly. Do you know where these files are kept? Multiple places. Cloud storage with crazy encryption. A safe deposit box at First National Bank. And a physical safe in his lake house. The one no one's supposed to know about. Vincent's eyebrows raised. Lake House. In his mother's maiden name. Hamilton. It's about 2 hours north on Lake Shasta. Very isolated. I've only been there once, to deliver papers when he claimed to be sick. Olivia hesitated. Natalie was there too. Vincent made notes. This documentation, what does it show exactly? Olivia looked physically ill. Evidence of their relationship, like I said. But also, financial transactions. Douglas was moving money from his clients to offshore accounts, then to accounts in Natalie's name, then back to him after she'd invested it in shell companies. They were laundering the money through your wife to make it look legitimate. And the pregnancy? Vincent asked quietly. Planned, Olivia said. I overheard them. Douglas has cancer, pancreatic stage 3. He's known for months, but kept it quiet. He said something about needing an heir, about keeping the bloodline pure. It was disturbing. Vincent sat back, digesting this information. The picture forming was even more twisted than he'd imagined. What do you want in exchange for your testimony? He asked finally. Protection for my brother. And a job. Anywhere but the financial sector. I have a business degree, but Douglas made sure I never used it for anything but his coffee and criminal activities. Vincent nodded. I can arrange both. But first, I need you to tell this story again, to Detective Miller and my attorney. As Olivia left with Trent to meet the detective, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. You're going to regret this war. Some enemies don't play by rules. Vincent felt an icy calm settle over him. Natalie was finally showing her true face, not a victim, but a willing accomplice and manipulator. That made what came next much easier. He called Eleanor. How soon can you give me access to that lake house? Chapter 5. The Lake House. Lake Shasta gleamed silver under the autumn moon as Vincent navigated the winding road toward the secluded property Olivia had identified. Eleanor had provided the security codes and assured him the place would be empty. Douglas was in custody, and Natalie had been staying with a friend since the arrest. Beside Vincent in the passenger seat, Trent checked his equipment. Lockpicks, a small electronic device for bypassing any additional security systems, and a handheld scanner to detect surveillance cameras. You sure about this, boss? Trent asked. Breaking and entering adds complications. It's not breaking and entering when Eleanor Preston gave us written permission to access a property legally owned by her mother-in-law, Vincent replied, holding up the notarized document Eleanor had signed. We're simply retrieving personal items at the family's request. Trent smirked. Nice loophole. They parked half a mile from the property and approached on foot through dense woods. The lake house was larger than Vincent had expected, a modern structure of glass and stone, hidden from the road and neighboring properties by strategic landscaping. Trent swept the perimeter with his scanner. 2 outdoor cameras, but they're offline, either powered down or disconnected from the network. Vincent frowned. That's convenient. Or concerning. Want abort? Trent asked. Vincent shook his head. Proceed with caution. The front door's electronic lock yielded to Eleanor's code. Vincent entered first, gun drawn. A precaution that felt increasingly necessary as they found the house dark, but showing signs of recent occupation. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the kitchen counter. A laptop charger was plugged into the wall, though no computer was attached. Someone's been here today, Trent observed, checking the warmth of the wine glass. Within the last couple hours, Vincent's instincts were screaming warning. Find a safe. I'll check the rest of the house. The ground floor revealed nothing unusual for a luxury vacation home. Vincent climbed the stairs silently, checking rooms as he went. The master bedroom was immaculate, clearly unused recently. The guest bedroom showed signs of habitation. Rumpled sheets, a woman's robe draped over a chair, a prescription bottle on the nightstand. Vincent examined the prescription, prenatal vitamins prescribed to Natalie Mercer. So she had been staying here. A soft noise from downstairs had him moving quickly back toward the stairs, gun ready. He found Trent in what appeared to be a home office, kneeling before an open-wall safe. It was already open, Trent said, frowning. And empty. Someone got here first, Vincent concluded. Recently. They performed a search of the entire house, but found no documentation, no files, nothing incriminating beyond the fact of the house's existence. As they prepared to leave, Vincent noticed a blinking light on the answering machine in the office, an oddly outdated piece of technology for such a modern house. He pressed play. Douglas, it's me. Natalie's voice filled the room. I've moved everything as you instructed. The digital files are on a backup drive in my safe deposit box. The physical documentation is with Calvin. I've taken care of the pregnancy situation. Don't try to contact me directly. They're probably watching. I'll visit you next week as your distraught daughter to discuss next steps. A pause. I miss you. This will all blow over, I promise. The message was time-stamped yesterday. Calvin, Vincent repeated. That's a name we haven't heard before. And what did she mean by taking care of the pregnancy situation? Trent asked. Vincent's jaw tightened. Either termination or a convenient miscarriage story to generate sympathy. Either way, the pregnant victim narrative is their next play. Back in the car, Vincent called Russell. We need to identify anyone named Calvin connected to Douglas or Natalie. And we need to access Natalie's safe deposit box. The first is doable, Russell replied. The second requires a court order, which means revealing what we know and why. Then we do this another way, Vincent decided. Have Detective Miller bring Natalie in for questioning tomorrow morning about the financial crimes. While she's occupied, I'll be visiting our old apartment to retrieve some personal belongings I left behind. Vincent, Russell's voice carried a warning. Don't cross any lines you can't uncross. I'm not the one who crossed the line, Vincent replied coldly. I'm just following the path they created. The next morning, Vincent received confirmation that Natalie had been detained for questioning. He drove to their former apartment building, where the management still recognized him as the legal owner. The doorman nodded respectfully as Vincent explained he needed to collect some documents he'd forgotten. Inside the penthouse, everything looked unnervingly normal, as if the life-shattering events of weeks ago had never occurred. Vincent moved purposefully to Natalie's home office, a small room she'd used mainly for online shopping and occasional watercolor painting. The painting supplies still cluttered the desk, but Vincent noted the computer was missing. Not surprising. He began a search of the room, looking for any hidden storage Natalie might have created. It took nearly an hour before he found it. A false bottom in the antique desk drawer, concealing a small notebook and a USB drive. The notebook contained what appeared to be account numbers and passwords in Natalie's flowing handwriting. The USB drive was encrypted, but Vincent pocketed both items anyway. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Miller. She's lawyered up. Will be released within the hour. Vincent had to move quickly. He completed his search, finding nothing else of value, and was about to leave when he heard the apartment door open. Hello, a male voice called. Natalie. Vincent froze, then silently moved behind the office door. Footsteps approached, a man's heavy tread. Natalie? Your mom said you might be here. The footsteps stopped outside the office door. Hello. The door pushed open slowly. Vincent remained still until the visitor stepped fully into the room, then pressed his gun against the man's back. Don't move, Vincent ordered. The man stiffened but complied. He was younger than Vincent expected, maybe 30, with an athletic build and expensive clothes. Who are you? Vincent demanded. Calvin Reed, the man replied, his voice remarkably steady. I could ask you the same question, but the gun against my spine suggests you're Vincent Mercer. What's your relationship to my wife? Calvin gave a short laugh. Complicated. Mind if I turn around? I prefer to see who's threatening to shoot me. Vincent stepped back slightly, keeping the gun trained on Calvin as he turned. The younger man had a handsome face with an arrogant set to his jaw. I'm Douglas Preston's protege, Calvin explained, seeming unperturbed by the weapon. And occasionally, when required, Natalie's boyfriend. Boyfriend, Vincent repeated flatly. Calvin shrugged. For appearances. Douglas doesn't like to share, but sometimes public appearances require Natalie to have a more age-appropriate companion, especially at industry events. You're part of their scheme. I prefer arrangement. And yes, I help manage certain aspects of their financial portfolio, including the offshore accounts your investigators haven't found yet. Calvin's eyes narrowed. Is that why you're here? Looking for evidence. I already have enough evidence to send Douglas away for decades, Vincent replied. I'm just tying up loose ends. Like me, Calvin's smile didn't reach his eyes. That would be a mistake. I'm the only one who knows where all the money is. About $50 million that the SEC hasn't frozen. Money Douglas was planning to use to disappear once things got too hot. Vincent studied him. And now you're planning to disappear with it yourself. Calvin spread his hands. Business is business. Douglas made a critical error getting caught. I don't intend to repeat his mistake. What about Natalie? What about her? Calvin's tone was dismissive. She served her purpose in the operation. Douglas is going down, and she's compromised. Assets with no further value should be liquidated. Vincent felt a surge of disgust. Not for Natalie. His feelings for her were already burned to ash, but for the callous calculation of these people who treated others as commodities. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent said, lowering his gun slightly. You're going to give me access to those offshore accounts, and in exchange, I won't turn you over to Detective Miller right now. Calvin laughed outright. Why would I do that? You have no leverage. Don't I? Vincent pulled out his phone, showing Calvin the screen, a recording app running. Your confession to involvement in financial crimes, plus whatever evidence Olivia Campos has already provided, should be sufficient for an arrest warrant. The younger man's confident expression faltered. Olivia? That little secretary is talking. She's been very helpful, Vincent confirmed. Now about those accounts. 20 minutes later, Vincent left the apartment with account numbers, passwords, and transfer protocols written in Calvin's hand, along with a signed confession implicating both Prestons in the financial scheme. As he drove away, Vincent called Russell. I have access to the offshore accounts, and a new witness willing to testify against both Douglas and Natalie. What did it cost you? Russell asked suspiciously. A head start, Vincent replied. Calvin Reed is probably booking a flight to a non-extradition country as we speak. But he left us everything we need first. And you let him go? Russell sounded shocked. Sometimes you sacrifice a pawn to capture the queen, Vincent said. Besides, I placed a tracker on him before he left. Detective Miller can pick him up at the airport if needed. Vincent's next call was to Eleanor. Calvin Reed. What do you know about him? Eleanor's sigh was audible. Douglas's golden boy. He's been grooming Calvin as his successor for years. Why? Because he just sold out your husband and daughter to save himself, Vincent informed her. Apparently loyalty isn't a family value among the Prestons or their associates. What happens now? Eleanor asked, her voice small. Now, Vincent said, we move to the final phase. Chapter 6, The Turning Point. The courtroom was packed for Douglas Preston's bail hearing. Financial crimes of this magnitude generated significant public interest, especially when they involved someone once considered financial royalty. Vincent sat in the back row, observing. Douglas looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his usually commanding presence reduced by prison pallor and the absence of his bespoke suits. Beside his attorney sat Natalie, dressed modestly in navy blue, her expression carefully crafted to convey distress and vulnerability. Vincent noted with clinical detachment that she'd lost weight, making her appear more fragile. A strategic choice, no doubt. She kept one hand protectively over her stomach, though Vincent knew from medical records obtained through the investigation that she had indeed taken care of the pregnancy situation, as mentioned in her message. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Reeves, was arguing against bail. Mr. Preston poses an extreme flight risk, Your Honor. We have evidence suggesting he has been planning to flee the country for months, including property purchases in non-extradition countries, and recently moved funds that remain unaccounted for. Douglas's attorney countered with arguments about his client's deep community ties and deteriorating health. My client has recently been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He requires specialized treatment that cannot be adequately provided in a detention facility. The cancer revelation caused a stir in the courtroom. Natalie dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Vincent remained impassive. Judge Martinez considered both arguments before rendering his decision. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. As Douglas was led away, his eyes met Vincent's across the courtroom. There was no fear there. Only cold calculation, even now. Natalie followed her father's gaze and stiffened when she saw Vincent. After a moment's hesitation, she approached him. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Please, just for a minute. Vincent considered refusing, but curiosity won out. 1 minute. They stepped into a quiet hallway alcove. Up close, Vincent could see the strain beneath Natalie's composed facade, the slight tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes. "I know what you think of me," she began, "but it's not what it seems." "Save it," Vincent cut her off. "I've seen the evidence, Natalie. All of it. The financial records, the DNA test, the videos from the lake house. I know exactly what you and Douglas have been doing, and for how long." Her eyes widened. "The lake house? How did you?" "Your mother told me everything," Vincent said. "She's cooperating fully with the investigation now." Natalie's carefully constructed mask slipped, revealing a flash of something ugly beneath. "That backstabbing bitch. She knew all along. She watched it happen and did nothing. She claims she didn't know the full extent," Vincent noted, watching Natalie's reaction. "Bullshit," Natalie spat. "She facilitated it. Why do you think she pushed me to marry you? Douglas needed someone wealthy, but controllable. Someone too obsessed with work to notice what was happening right under his nose." The words were designed to wound, but Vincent felt nothing beyond a clinical interest in her tactics. "Is that why you faked the miscarriages too? To keep me distracted with grief while you and Douglas embezzled from my accounts?" Uncertainty flickered across Natalie's face. "What?" "The hospital records," Vincent clarified. "The ones submitted for our insurance claims. They were forged. There were no miscarriages. Natalie, you were never pregnant before now." This, finally, seemed to genuinely surprise her. "No, that's not," Douglas told me. "Douglas told you what you needed to hear to play your role," Vincent said. "Just like he's been doing since you were 16. Natalie's expression hardened. "You think you understand everything, but you don't. You have no idea what Douglas is capable of. If you keep pushing this, you'll regret it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning," she replied, "from someone who knows what happens to people who cross him. Even in prison, he has reach." Vincent studied her. This woman he'd once loved, now revealed as a stranger. "Your minute is up. Tell Douglas I said hello." As Natalie walked away, Vincent's phone vibrated with a text from Detective Miller. "Got him. Calvin Reed arrested at private airfield, trying to charter flight to Venezuela. Singing like a canary to save himself. Another piece in place." Vincent texted back, "Keep me posted." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, sensing the scandal beneath the financial crimes. Vincent avoided them, slipping into his waiting car, where Russell was already seated. "Calvin's been arrested," Vincent informed him, and Natalie just all but confirmed her willing participation in everything. Russell nodded. "The prosecutor wants to meet with us this afternoon. They're considering additional charges beyond the financial crimes." "Good," Vincent said. "It's time to end this." Later, in Prosecutor Reeves's office, Vincent listened as she outlined the expanding case against Douglas and now Natalie. Financial fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. Those are straightforward, Reeves explained. But the evidence regarding their personal relationship complicates matters. The DNA test confirms incest, but proving when it began is more difficult. Eleanor Preston will testify it began when Natalie was underage, Vincent said. And Olivia Campos confirms Douglas kept documented evidence of the relationship for blackmail purposes. Reeves nodded. Even so, these cases are difficult to prosecute successfully. Juries find them disturbing. Defense attorneys play on that discomfort to create reasonable doubt. What if there were video evidence? Vincent asked. Clear, irrefutable proof of both the relationship and the financial crimes. Reeves leaned forward. Do you have such evidence? Not yet, Vincent admitted. But I know where it is. Natalie mentioned videos from the lake house that I supposedly found. Except I didn't find any videos there. She inadvertently confirmed their existence. And you believe they're in her safe deposit box, Russell concluded. With this new information from Calvin Reed's confession, we can get a warrant. I'll speak to the judge immediately, Reeves agreed. This could break the case wide open. 2 days later, Vincent stood in an evidence room with Detective Miller, Prosecutor Reeves, and a digital forensics expert as they reviewed the contents of Natalie's safe deposit box. In addition to the expected financial records, they found a portable hard drive containing hundreds of video files, meticulously dated and organized. These go back 7 years, the forensics expert noted, scrolling through the file directory. Long before your marriage, Mr. Mercer. Vincent's expression remained neutral. Can you determine if they've been edited or manipulated? Preliminary analysis suggests they're unaltered, the expert confirmed. And many contain embedded metadata confirming date, time, and location. Detective Miller looked physically uncomfortable as he reviewed a sample file. This is comprehensive evidence, but disturbing as hell. And more than enough for additional charges, Reeves added. Sexual abuse of a minor, coercion, blackmail, beyond the financial crimes. Vincent turned to her. What happens now? We present everything to the grand jury, she replied. With this evidence, I expect indictments on all counts. Douglas will likely die in prison given his health condition and the severity of the charges. Natalie faces significant prison time as well, though her attorneys will likely argue she was under Douglas's influence. Was she? Miller asked, glancing at Vincent. A victim or a willing participant? Vincent considered the question, thinking of Natalie's cold threats in the courthouse. I believe she started as the former and became the latter. But that's for the courts to decide now. As they left the evidence room, Reeves held Vincent back. There's something else you should know. Douglas Preston attempted suicide in his cell this morning. Vincent felt nothing. No satisfaction, no disappointment. Did he succeed? No. He's under suicide watch now. But he left a note, mostly rambling about bloodlines and legacy. And your name, several times. Reeves studied him carefully. He seems fixated on you. Said you'd stolen his future. His cancer is terminal, Vincent reminded her. His future was already limited. Even so, Reeves warned, be careful. Men like Preston, wealthy, powerful, facing the end, can be unpredictable. Dangerous. Vincent nodded, but inwardly he welcomed the challenge. Douglas Preston had declared war on the wrong enemy. And the final battle was just beginning. Chapter 7. Hidden Pieces. 6 months after Douglas Preston's arrest, Vincent sat across from Eleanor in an upscale restaurant overlooking the bay. The trial proceedings were underway, with both Douglas and Natalie facing multiple charges. Calvin Reed had taken a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. Olivia Campos had been relocated with a new identity and job at one of Vincent's subsidiary companies. You look well, Eleanor noted, studying Vincent over her wine glass. Their relationship had evolved into an uneasy alliance born of mutual necessity. Business is thriving, Vincent replied neutrally. People always need security, especially when they've seen what happened to Douglas. Eleanor winced at the mention of her husband. She'd filed for divorce the week after his arrest, distancing herself publicly and legally from his crimes. Her testimony about witnessing inappropriate behavior years ago had been devastating to Douglas's defense, though she'd maintained she never knew the full extent until recently. Have you been to see him? Vincent asked. Eleanor shook her head. No, his attorneys advised against it, and frankly, I have nothing to say to him. She hesitated. Have you seen Natalie? No, Vincent replied. Unlike Douglas, Natalie had been granted bail pending trial, though her movements were restricted and monitored. She asks about you, Eleanor said. When I visit her. Vincent raised an eyebrow. What could she possibly want to know? If you're seeing anyone. If you've sold the penthouse. Small things. Eleanor sighed. I think she genuinely misses aspects of your life together. Stockholm Syndrome is a powerful force, Vincent commented dryly. Eleanor's expression hardened. You think I don't know that? I lived with that man for 30 years. I enabled. She trailed off, composing herself. Anyway, that's not why I asked to meet. Why did you? Douglas has been moved to the prison medical ward. The cancer has progressed significantly. His doctors give him weeks, maybe a month. Eleanor twisted her napkin. Before he dies, there are things you should know. Vincent leaned back. Such as, he's still protecting something or someone. The investigators found evidence of payments to an unknown recipient continuing even after his arrest. Large sums routed through multiple offshore accounts. This was new information. How do you know this? Diane, Eleanor admitted, referring to her attorney. She's been liaising with the prosecution. They can't trace the final destination of these funds. Vincent frowned. Why tell me? This sounds like information for Detective Miller or Prosecutor Reeves. Because Douglas mentioned your name in connection with these payments. He told his nurse that Mercer should be careful about which rocks he turns over. It was interpreted as a threat. Vincent considered this. The prosecutors already warned me Douglas might lash out from prison. This is different, Eleanor insisted. Douglas doesn't make idle threats. If he's spending money, his precious money, while dying in prison, it's for something significant. After their meeting, Vincent contacted Trent. I need enhanced security protocols immediately, and a complete background check on everyone who's contacted Douglas Preston in prison. You think he's arranged something against you? Trent asked. It's a possibility we can't ignore, Vincent replied, especially given how much I've cost him. The next day, Vincent received a visitor request from an unexpected source. Natalie wanted to see him. After consideration, he agreed to meet her at her attorney's office, neutral ground with witnesses. Natalie looked vastly different from their courthouse encounter. The pretense of fragility was gone, replaced by a cold composure reminiscent of her father. She wore an expensive but conservative outfit, her hair pulled back severely. Thank you for coming, she said as Vincent entered the conference room. Her attorney, a sharp-featured man named Levinson, sat beside her, while Russell accompanied Vincent. You requested this meeting, Vincent reminded her. What do you want? Natalie glanced at her attorney, who nodded slightly. I want to offer you information in exchange for your support with the prosecutor. Vincent almost laughed. You're asking me to help reduce your sentence after everything you've done? I'm offering you protection, Natalie countered. Douglas has arranged something you won't see coming, and you suddenly care about my well-being? Natalie's eyes flashed with familiar defiance. I care about survival. Douglas is dying, which means his control is slipping. I'm positioning myself for what comes after. By betraying him, Vincent noted. By ensuring I have a future, she corrected. One that doesn't end with me in prison for decades. Vincent studied her, trying to determine if this was another manipulation. What information are you offering? Douglas has another child, Natalie said flatly. A son, older than me. The revelation hung in the air. Russell straightened in his chair. That's impossible, Vincent said finally. The background investigations were thorough. There's no record of another child. Because Marion Preston never gave birth, Natalie explained. Douglas impregnated his college girlfriend before meeting my mother. The girlfriend disappeared for 9 months, had the baby in Mexico, then gave him up for private adoption to a family Douglas selected and paid handsomely. Why would he hide a son? Russell asked. Because the girlfriend was 15 when it happened, Natalie replied. Douglas was 22. It would have been statutory rape, and his father was running for state senate at the time. The pregnancy was hidden, the adoption arranged, and the girlfriend's family paid off. Vincent processed this information. You're saying Douglas has another child out there who's what? In his 30s now. 38, Natalie confirmed, and very much in contact with his biological father. They've had a relationship since he turned 18. Does he know about you? Vincent asked. About your relationship with Douglas? Natalie's expression tightened. Yes, he knows everything. And you think he's the one receiving these payments? The one Douglas has tasked with some revenge against me. I know he is, Natalie insisted. Brandon Weber. That's his adopted name. He lives in Seattle now, works as a private security consultant. The occupation pinged Vincent's radar immediately. Private security meant training, resources, connections, potentially dangerous ones. Why are you telling me this now? Vincent pressed. Because I want immunity, Natalie stated baldly. Or, at minimum, a significantly reduced sentence with no sex offender registration. In exchange, I'll testify about Douglas's relationship with Brandon, the payments, and his explicit instructions regarding you. The attorneys exchanged glances, professional calculations visible on their faces. I need to verify this information before recommending any deal to the prosecutor, Russell said cautiously. Of course, Natalie agreed. I can provide proof of Brandon's existence and his connection to Douglas. Bank records, photographs, correspondence. Vincent remained silent, evaluating. This could be another manipulation. Natalie creating a fictional threat to leverage a better deal for herself. But if true, it explained the mysterious payments and Douglas's veiled warnings. One question, Vincent said finally. If Brandon is so loyal to Douglas, why would you risk betraying them both? Surely that puts you in danger too. Natalie's smile was cold. Because Brandon hates me. He believes I took his rightful place in Douglas's life, his inheritance, his position, everything. Once Douglas dies, Brandon won't hesitate to eliminate competition. I'm simply choosing the lesser threat. After the meeting, Vincent and Russell debated the credibility of Natalie's claims. It could be fabricated, Russell argued. A desperate attempt to save herself. It's too specific to be completely invented, Vincent countered. And it aligns with the mysterious payments Eleanor mentioned. So what now? Now, Vincent said, we find Brandon Weber before he finds me. Chapter 8. The Prodigal Son. The Seattle rain fell in sheets as Vincent's private jet touched down. Beside him, Trent reviewed security protocols on a tablet, while a second security specialist, Mira, checked her weapon discreetly. According to our investigation, Weber operates a boutique security firm specializing in high-net-worth clients, Trent reported. Former military, Army Special Forces. Honorable discharge in 2015 after 3 tours. No criminal record. On paper, he's clean. The perfect cover, Vincent noted. Just like I was for Natalie and Douglas. Mira looked up from her tablet. His firm's headquarters is downtown. We have surveillance in place, but he hasn't been seen there in 3 days. What about residential properties? He maintains a condo downtown and a cabin outside the city. Both locations are being monitored. Trent hesitated. Sir, if Weber really is Douglas's son and acting on his orders, confronting him directly could be dangerous. More dangerous than waiting for whatever he has planned. Vincent countered. No, we locate him, confirm Natalie's information, and neutralize whatever threat he poses, legally. The operations center they'd established in a rented office suite provided real-time updates on Weber's known locations and activities. Photographs showed a broad-shouldered man with Douglas's jawline and coloring. The resemblance subtle but unmistakable once you knew to look for it. Financial records confirm regular payments from Douglas to Weber dating back 20 years, reported their financial analyst. Initially small amounts, then increasing significantly after Weber left the military. In the last 6 months, over $3 million has been transferred through the shell company network. Vincent studied the intelligence board they'd assembled. What's his connection to me? We've never crossed paths professionally or personally. Unknown, Trent admitted. But we did find something interesting. Weber was in your city 3 times in the past year, each visit coinciding with your business trips abroad. The implications were clear. He was watching me, studying my patterns while I was away, and Natalie was alone. Or meeting with Natalie herself, Mira suggested. Vincent considered this. Check security footage from my building during those dates. See if Weber appears anywhere near the penthouse. Hours later, Mira returned with confirmation. Weber visited your building twice, gaining access through the service entrance with what appears to be his staff keycard. He spent approximately 2 hours inside each time. Vincent's jaw tightened. So he and Natalie were coordinating something even before Douglas's arrest. There's more, Mira continued. We traced Weber's recent movements. 3 weeks ago, he visited a chemical supply company specializing in laboratory equipment. 2 days later, he received a delivery at his cabin from a pharmaceutical supply distributor. What kind of chemicals? Vincent asked sharply. We're still determining specifics, Trent replied. But combined with his recent purchases of specialized filtration equipment and delivery systems, he's creating something, Vincent concluded. Something that requires careful handling. The picture forming was disturbing. Weber's military background, his security expertise, his connection to Douglas and Natalie, and now suspicious chemical purchases, all pointed to a sophisticated threat. We need to move on the cabin, Vincent decided. Now, before whatever he's planning is ready. We should contact local authorities, Russell advised via video conference. This is potentially a matter for law enforcement or even federal agencies if we're talking about chemical weapons. Vincent shook his head. Not yet. We don't have enough concrete evidence to convince them to act immediately. By the time they process warrants and mobilize, it could be too late. The plan came together quickly. Trent's team would establish surveillance on the cabin, confirming Weber's presence and activity. Vincent, against everyone's advice, insisted on being present, not participating in the actual approach, but close enough to respond if necessary. "This is my fight," he said simply when Russell protested. "I need to see it through." The cabin was isolated, nestled among towering pines 2 hours outside Seattle. From their observation point, Vincent and the security team watched as Weber moved between the main building and a detached garage that had been converted into some kind of workshop. Thermal imaging shows extensive equipment in that workshop, Mira reported. Temperature patterns consistent with laboratory settings. "Any other occupants?" Vincent asked. "Negative. He appears to be working alone." The radio crackled with a report from their advanced team member. "Subject is leaving the workshop, carrying what appears to be a sealed container, heading toward a vehicle." Vincent tensed. "He's mobile. We need to intercept now before he leaves with whatever he's created." "Local sheriff's department has been alerted," Trent confirmed. "ETA 8 minutes. Too long," Vincent decided. "Move in. Non-lethal takedown only." The operation unfolded. As Weber placed the container in his SUV, Trent's team emerged from concealment positions. Weber reacted instantly, dropping into a defensive stance, but found himself surrounded. "Brandon Weber," Trent called out. "We need to talk about Douglas Preston." Weber's expression shifted from surprise to cold calculation. "You're Vincent Mercer," he said, spotting Vincent approaching from the tree line. "I wondered if you'd figure it out in time." "Figure what out?" Vincent asked, maintaining a safe distance. "Whatever Douglas has paid you to do." Weber laughed, a sound eerily reminiscent of his father. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about money." "Then explain it to me," Vincent said, watching Weber's hands carefully. "Douglas Preston destroyed my mother's life, then tried to buy my loyalty with promises of recognition, inheritance, legitimacy." Weber's voice hardened. "Do you know what it's like to discover your entire existence was an inconvenience handled with non-disclosure agreements and offshore accounts? So this is what? Revenge against Douglas by targeting me?" Vincent asked, confusion evident. Weber's expression shifted to something like pity. "You really don't know." He nodded toward the container in his vehicle. "This isn't for you. It's for Douglas." Understanding dawned. "You're planning to kill your father before the cancer does." "Cancer is too gentle for what he deserves," Weber confirmed. "And too quick. I've developed something that will leave him aware, but paralyzed, able to feel everything while his body shuts down over days. The perfect punishment for a control freak like Douglas." The distant wail of sirens became audible. Weber tensed, glancing toward his vehicle. "It's over, Brandon," Vincent said. "The police are coming. Whatever you've planned for Douglas isn't worth throwing your life away." "My life was thrown away the moment Douglas Preston's DNA became part of me," Weber replied bitterly. "But you're right about one thing. This plan is compromised." What happened next unfolded in seconds. Weber reached into his jacket. Trent shouted a warning. Mira moved to intercept. Vincent registered the glint of metal. Not a gun, but a small remote device. "No!" Vincent lunged forward, but it was too late. Weber pressed the button. For one suspended moment, nothing happened. Then a deafening explosion ripped through the workshop, sending debris and flames skyward. The shock wave knocked Vincent backward as Trent's team tackled Weber to the ground. In the chaos that followed, police sirens, fire trucks, hazmat teams, Vincent watched as Weber was handcuffed and loaded into a police vehicle. The man's expression remained calm, almost satisfied, even as his laboratory burned. He had a fail-safe, Mira explained, joining Vincent as they watched the emergency response. Preliminary analysis suggests he destroyed all evidence of whatever he was creating, or he had already completed it and the delivery system is elsewhere, Vincent noted grimly. "We've alerted the prison where Douglas is being held," Trent confirmed. "They're increasing security and screening all visitors' packages, even medical supplies." If Weber planned to smuggle something in, they'll find it. Vincent wasn't so certain. A man with Weber's training and resources would have contingencies. The laboratory might be destroyed, but that didn't mean the threat was eliminated. His phone rang, an unknown number. "Mr. Mercer?" a female voice said when he answered. "This is Nurse Chambers from County Memorial Prison Hospital. I'm calling about Douglas Preston." Vincent's grip tightened on the phone. "What about him?" "He's asking to see you. Says it's urgent. A matter of life and death. Normally we wouldn't pass along such requests, but given his condition." She hesitated. "The doctors say he won't last the week." Vincent thought of Weber, of the destroyed laboratory, of Douglas's manipulations even from his deathbed. "Tell him I'll be there tomorrow," Vincent decided. It was time to end this, face to face. Chapter 9. Final Reckonings. The prison hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. Vincent followed a guard through secure doors, past checkpoints where his identification was verified and he was thoroughly searched for contraband or weapons. "He's been asking for you every hour," the guard commented as they approached the final security door. "Must be important." "Or he thinks it is," Vincent replied non-committally. Douglas Preston occupied a private room at the end of the ward, a concession to his terminal condition rather than his former status. The man in the hospital bed bore little resemblance to the commanding figure Vincent remembered. Cancer and imprisonment had withered him, leaving sunken cheeks and paper-thin skin stretched over prominent bones. Yet his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, remained unchanged, brightening with interest as Vincent entered. "You came?" Douglas said, his voice raspy but strong. "I wasn't sure you would." Vincent remained standing near the door. "Your nurse said it was urgent. I assume this is about Brandon." Douglas's eyebrows rose slightly. "You found him then. Clever boy." "Not clever enough," Vincent replied. "His operation has been shut down. Whatever he was planning for you is finished." A thin smile stretched across Douglas's face. "Is that what you think? That Brandon wanted to harm me?" Vincent frowned. He had a laboratory full of chemicals and delivery systems. He explicitly stated his intention to make you suffer before death. Douglas's laugh dissolved into a coughing fit. A nurse moved to assist him, but he waved her away irritably. "Brandon has always been theatrical," Douglas managed once he'd recovered. "Takes after his mother that way." "But no, Vincent, he wasn't creating anything to harm me. Quite the opposite." "Explain," Vincent demanded. Douglas gestured weakly to the chair beside his bed. "Sit, please. I tire easily these days." Against his better judgment, Vincent sat, maintaining a careful distance. "Brandon is a chemist by training," Douglas began. Before his military career, he was quite promising in pharmaceutical research. His specialty was experimental cancer treatments. Ironic, given my current condition. Vincent's frown deepened. "You're saying he was trying to cure you?" "In a manner of speaking," Douglas confirmed. "Though cure may be optimistic at this stage. Extend would be more accurate. Long enough to complete certain arrangements." "What arrangements?" Douglas studied Vincent with those penetrating eyes. "You destroyed my legacy, Vincent. My company, my reputation, my freedom. But my bloodline, that was meant to continue through Natalie's child. Our child." Vincent felt a wave of revulsion. The pregnancy Natalie took care of, a temporary setback, Douglas dismissed with a weak gesture. "Nature can be tried again, but not if I'm dead and Natalie is in prison. Hence Brandon's project, an experimental treatment to extend my life long enough to implement contingency plans." "You're dying, Douglas," Vincent reminded him bluntly. "And Natalie is facing decades in prison. Whatever sick dynasty you imagined is finished." "Is it?" Douglas's smile returned, more predatory now despite his weakness. "You haven't asked why I wanted to see you." A sense of unease crept along Vincent's spine. "I assumed for the pleasure of seeing your handiwork dismantled piece by piece." "No, Vincent. I called you here to warn you." Douglas's voice dropped lower, forcing Vincent to lean closer to hear. "Brandon wasn't my only contingency plan, and he wasn't working alone." Vincent went very still. "What are you saying?" "Natalie betrayed me by telling you about Brandon. That wasn't part of the plan. Douglas's expression hardened. But there are others, people you haven't identified, arrangements you haven't discovered. People loyal to me, not for money but for deeper bonds. More children? Vincent asked, disgust evident in his voice. Douglas merely smiled. Family takes many forms, Vincent. You'd know that if you had one. This is why you called me here, to make vague threats from your deathbed. I called you here to offer a trade, Douglas corrected. Information for protection. Vincent almost laughed. Protection? From what? You'll be dead within days. Not for me, Douglas clarified. For Natalie. Reduce the charges against her. Use your influence with the prosecutor. In exchange, I'll tell you exactly what's coming and how to stop it. Vincent stood, looking down at the withered man with contempt. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't a negotiation. There's no deal to be made. Natalie made her choices. So did you. Now you both face the consequences. Don't be a fool, Douglas hissed, suddenly animated. What's coming will destroy more than just you. They're innocent people. Save your manipulations, Vincent cut him off. They don't work anymore. Whatever scheme you've set in motion, I'll handle it, just like I handled everything else you threw at me. As Vincent turned to leave, Douglas called after him, his voice stronger than seemed possible from his frail body. She never loved you, you know. Not for a single moment. You were just a convenient mark, wealthy, workaholic, desperate for a family. The perfect cover. Vincent paused at the door. I know, he said without turning. That's why I don't feel a shred of remorse for what happens to either of you. Outside in the corridor, Vincent took a deep breath, centering himself. Douglas's warnings could be nothing more than the desperate manipulations of a dying man. Or they could be genuine, a final trap laid by a meticulous opponent. His phone vibrated with a text from Trent. We found something in Weber's financials. Multiple payments to someone inside the prison. Need to talk ASAP. Vincent immediately called Detective Miller. You need to lock down the prison hospital and check every staff member who's had contact with Douglas Preston in the last week. Already happening, Miller replied, his voice tense. We found a nurse's aide with false credentials who's been working there for a month. She disappeared from her shift an hour ago, right after your visit was scheduled. Vincent's blood ran cold. What's her name? Lisa Weber, Miller replied. Facial recognition suggests she's Brandon Weber's wife, though they've kept that connection hidden. Vincent broke into a run toward the exit. Douglas isn't the target. I am. This whole thing was a setup to get me to the prison. Outside, Vincent scanned the parking lot, suddenly acutely aware of his vulnerability. His security detail was parked near the entrance, still too far away. The lot was nearly empty at this hour, just a few vehicles scattered across the asphalt. A woman emerged from behind a van 30 feet away. Average height, unremarkable features, entirely forgettable except for the focused intensity in her eyes. In her hand was a small device that Vincent immediately recognized as a remote trigger. Lisa Weber, he called out, stopping in his tracks. She smiled, an expression devoid of warmth. Vincent Mercer, right on schedule. Whatever you're planning won't bring Brandon back, Vincent said, keeping his voice calm while calculating distances and options. He's already in custody. This only makes things worse. Brandon knew the risks, she replied. As did I. Some things are worth sacrificing everything for. Like Douglas Preston? Vincent asked incredulously. A man who uses and discards people like tissues? Lisa's expression hardened. You don't know anything about our relationship with Douglas. What he gave us. What he promised. Let me guess, Vincent said, trying to keep her talking while subtly signaling to his security team, now visible at the entrance. Another secret child? Or just devoted followers promised rewards from the Preston fortune? Family, Lisa corrected. Something you tried to destroy. Her finger hovered over the remote trigger. Vincent tensed, ready to move. Even if you kill me, it changes nothing, he told her. Douglas dies in that hospital bed. Brandon spends his life in prison. Natalie, too. Whatever family Douglas promised you is already finished. Doubt flickered across Lisa's face, just enough hesitation for Trent and Mira to approach from different angles, weapons drawn. "Drop the device," Trent ordered. "Now!" Time seemed to slow as Lisa's eyes darted between Vincent and the approaching security team. Her finger twitched toward the trigger. Mira fired first, a perfect shot that struck Lisa's hand, sending the remote device spinning across the asphalt. Lisa screamed in pain and rage as Trent tackled her to the ground. Vincent moved swiftly to secure the remote, examining it carefully. Not a simple detonator as he'd expected, but something more sophisticated, a trigger for multiple synchronized devices. "Bomb squad," he ordered immediately, in full evacuation of the prison hospital. The next hours passed in controlled chaos. 3 explosive devices were discovered, one in Vincent's car, one in the prison hospital's electrical room, and one in the courthouse where Natalie's next hearing was scheduled. All were successfully disarmed. Brandon and Lisa Weber both faced additional charges of conspiracy and attempted murder. Their questioning revealed the full extent of Douglas's contingency plans. A network of devoted followers, many with blood ties to the Preston family through Douglas's numerous extramarital affairs, all promised shares of hidden assets in exchange for loyalty. As Vincent watched the final Weber device being loaded into a containment vehicle, Detective Miller joined him. "We checked Douglas's hospital room after the evacuation," Miller said. "He's gone." Vincent's head snapped up. "Gone? How?" "Died during the evacuation. Doctors say the stress was too much for his system." Miller studied Vincent's expression. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," Vincent admitted. "Douglas Preston orchestrated his entire life. Why should his death be any different? He chose his moment, after his final manipulation failed, but before he could be questioned about his network. Cold calculation until the end," Miller agreed. "Speaking of which, the prosecutor wants to discuss Natalie's case. With Douglas dead and the Weber conspiracy exposed, there might be room to reconsider some charges." Vincent's expression hardened. No deals, no leniency. She knew exactly what she was doing every step of the way. With Douglas, with me, with the Webers. She made her choices. 3 months later, Vincent stood in the empty penthouse one final time. The furniture had been sold or donated, the walls repainted, all traces of his life with Natalie erased. Tomorrow, new owners would take possession. His phone buzzed with a notification. Natalie's sentencing had concluded. 20 years, with possibility of parole after 15. The judge had been unmoved by her attempts to position herself as Douglas's victim, particularly after the Weber conspiracy demonstrated her willing participation in planning violence against Vincent. As Vincent prepared to leave, he noticed an envelope that had been slipped under the door, his name handwritten on the front. Inside was a note in Eleanor's elegant script. "Vincent, Natalie asked me to deliver this after her sentencing. I'll leave it to your judgment whether to read it. Eleanor." Enclosed was another envelope, sealed. Vincent considered throwing it away unopened. Whatever Natalie had to say, excuses, accusations, manipulations, held no interest for him now. Yet something made him break the seal and unfold the single page inside. "Vincent, by now you've won completely. Douglas is dead. I'm imprisoned. The Preston name is ruined. You've taken everything, just as you promised that night. I want to ask for forgiveness. We both know I don't deserve it, nor do I truly seek it. What I did, all of it, was my choice. Douglas may have started it, but I continued willingly. The power, the manipulation, the game of it all, I enjoyed it. Perhaps that makes me a monster like him. What I will say